The time is 6:00 p.m.
Did I say that wrong?
Oops, October 11th, I'm sorry. Commissioner Bachelor, will you lead us in the?
Yes.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Do any of the commissioners have declarations of conflict to disclose?
Nope.
No. Okay. All right, takes us to agenda, approval agenda order. I look for a motion.
I make a motion that we approve the order of the agenda as it stands.
Second it.
Got a motion and a second. We'll start our vote from you, Wayne.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Okay. Review of the minutes. Did we have a chance to look at those?
I looked at them.
Everything look good to you?
I'm still going through it. I got a different set of minutes. There's more in here. No, these are from other meeting.
So we had
Yeah, so you have to specify.
review of the minutes, September 13th and September 28th special meeting.
Yeah, I just barely got these today.
Don't we have to vote on each one separately, probably?
I think if nobody has any issue with it, I think we can, okay.
I didn't have an issue, but I wasn't here for the special meeting.
Yeah, I was not here for this.
Okay, but you were here for the other one?
I can make a motion separately if you want.
Yeah.
Are you ready? Do you want to go through them more? Or?
I'm getting almost through it.
Okay.
The first one, or the special meeting, I'm good.
Okay, well, we can,
I make a motion that we approve the minutes for 9/28/2023 as written.
I'll second it.
got a motion and a second. Take a vote.
Aye.
I abstain.
I abstain.
Aye.
Aye. I make a motion that we approve minutes for 9/13/2023 as written.
Got a
I
motion,
second it.
motion second.
Okay, got you. Aye.
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 Okay, this will take us to our public forum. If anybody would like to address anything that's not on the agenda, now is your time to do that. I'll open the public forum now.
And he's on the board later, so he might have something for the test.
Okay, all right. Okay, then I will close the public forum. Takes us to our reports. I don't have anything to report. Any of the commissioners have anything to report?
Nope.
Okay. Riker?
Yes, I have a few things here. Over the past few weeks, I've had the opportunity to attend a number of different conferences and events. One of those was the American Planners Association Conference in Ogden, Utah. And a few of the topics that they discussed up there, they went over a few more things on the subdivision changes from the state legislature. They're providing a number of different tools for us to use to bring our code into compliance with state code. We have until December 31st of 2024 to come into compliance with that. And we're currently working on that ordinance to meet that deadline. They also discussed the results for the Guiding Our Growth survey. That was a statewide survey discussing the growth across the state of Utah. They went over those results. If you'd like to see those can be found at guidingourgrowth.utah.gov. And then they also went over a few of the topics for the legislative session coming up. Those topics include housing is a top priority for the governor. the state prohibiting zoning for less than 2 acres for less than 2 units per acre, state mandating all types of ADUs as permitted uses in residential zones, state mandating duplexes, triplexes as permitted uses in residential zones, state mandating that X percentage of residential zones must include small lots and duplexes, state caps on minimum lot size, state assigning a minimum base density for every city to plan for while making general plans binding, state definitions for residential setbacks, streamlined regulations for modular homes, state definitions for garage size standards in single-family homes, state infrastructure funding for projects such as parking structures and utilities that would result in more affordable homeownership. Other ways to make land use processes faster, building on those changes from the subdivision ordinance. More housing in commercial areas, state standards for parking stall sizes, among other things. Those items are currently items that have proposals before the legislature. Additionally, I attended the One Utah Summit in Cedar City. They discussed a number of different economic development topics, but also the Department of Outdoor Recreation was in attendance there, and they discussed that there would be a new grant that should come out in the next year or so that would address planning assistance for trails and outdoor recreation activities. At that conference as well, there was that push for affordable housing was reiterated, as well as priorities being made for modular or prefabricated housing. And there was smaller lots were discussed as a large priority for the state. As of right now in the planning department, we're currently working on a number of different ordinances as well. Some of those ordinances include the landscape ordinance, a subdivision ordinance, a park ordinance, parking, lot split, accessory dwelling units, a sign ordinance, site plan ordinance, and a number of others. That's all I have.
You mentioned the percentage. Did you say 30%? Is that what that was?
So was that on the legislative topics?
Yeah.
So it was X percentage. They didn't give an actual percentage, but they're discussing a minimum percentage.
Talked about trails and the grants for that. Would that affect Tokerville Falls and that type of thing? Is it BLM land, or is that just for city-owned land, or how does that work?
So with that particular grant, they were discussing just broad outdoor recreation activities and planning associated with that. So, I mean, if that's something that the city decided to pursue, then possibly, but we could apply it to other trail projects within the city.
Thank you. Darren's not here tonight. Afton, have you got anything?
Yeah, I do. Just kind of the same report that we give in city council. And some of those conferences that Riker talked about, I attended with him as well. The financial report for the city, Keddington and Christensen came and they performed our annual on-site pre-audit. They'll be back on the 18th and 19th to perform our final audit for the year. Again, we've received positive feedback. We've completed all the items from last year. Separation of duties, fraud risk assessment, some things like that. But again, they'll be back on the 18th and 19th. They'll be here for 2 days doing the final audit. So we're excited about that. We always do really well on those. Then at this time, 33% of the year has elapsed and we've spent 26% of the budget. So our spending is on track. We meet with Hinton Burdick once a month to reconcile and go through that. Grants, we've reported this, that we've received the FEMA BRIC grant in the amount of $38,000. It was anticipated that Tokerville City would have to match $12,000 in addition to that. We were able to get that funded, and so we held the kickoff meeting with both FEMA and then our floodplain manager from Rosenberg Associates, that's Jared Bates. A couple of other grants that we're going to talk about, and in addition to the one that Riker was just talking about, just a little bit of clarification on that grant that Riker was talking about with the OHV. there are two separate grants through the state. One is from the outdoor, one is for recreation, and then the other one is OHV, where they take a portion of the side-by-sides and registration from four-wheelers, things like that, and they fund those. So one of them is specific to outdoor off-road, and then the other is specific to trails and recreation, which are more active transportation trails. So those are funded from two different sources, both by the state. The grant that we were just talking about, that FEMA BRIC grant, we've been working on that for quite some time. That is to do an erosion hazard study for both Ash Creek and Laverkin Creek. And then the next step in that is that we have, they come in and we work with the county and to get the ACE crews in here to actually clean out those. Both of those waterways. And then from there, we're working with Rosenberg to engineer some trails so that we can have trail systems that are in our capital facilities plans along the waterways, very similar to what they've done in City of St. George along the Virgin River. That same type of trail system. We've met with the governor's office of economic opportunity and development. We went and did an infrastructure tour with them. We had them come out to Tokerville. Colette Cox and Darren Prince came out here and we toured our infrastructure. Again, we've applied for a water infrastructure grant in the amount of $4.5 million to construct a 2 million gallon water tank and an associated pump house out on the west side of the city. We should hear back on that in December. I also attended the Utah League of Cities and Towns and the One Utah Summit. I was at the league with Ruth, and then I was at One Utah with him. The governor spoke of several things. A lot of what the governor spoke about was civility, especially over land use, that things are getting heated and progress is getting stopped just due to people not listening to the other side. So that was hit pretty hard. As far as topics that they had there, they talked a lot, like Riker said, they talked about in some of these breakout sessions a lot about water, about drought, about managing that responsibly. I attended one about an inland port authority, just seeing logistics of things here for commercial, what they're looking at, what they're promoting statewide. And so it was interesting to see kind of the urban goals versus the rural goals. One theme that has come through very, very clear in all of these that we're attending is the need to shorten driveways, which sounds really interesting at first, but they promoted it in lots and lots of different sessions. And the idea behind it, as we went through these different breakout sessions with us, that in shortening driveways, that developers would be able to take this extra room from smaller streets and take the shortened driveways and use this to have extra room for square footage for affordable housing. I kind of had a different view of that. My take of it was more that they were pushing electric vehicles a lot. I mean, that's really what my take on it was. I'm sure some of it was for affordable housing, but they were definitely pushing that. I think as we look at land use, it's important that we consider that perspective of electric vehicles. They talked a lot about what that would do to, I don't know if, how much, so what that actually would do as far as pushing toward electric vehicles. A lot of the way that we get funds in this city are called B&C road funds. And I don't know if everybody's familiar with those, but in the state of Utah, road funds are divided they're into classes, right? A, B, and C road funds. And B road funds are when you have a state route that runs through your town. They say, we recognize that this has an impact on your city. And so they divide up those funds. The state does divide those up, a portion of gas tax basically, and a portion of that comes to us. So the B roads are more like state routes, and then the C roads are more like community routes that would be, our side streets and things. So we get a portion of gas tax. So a major topic at the legislature was, if we do push for these smaller driveways and people can't drive big diesel trucks and they don't buy gas, how do we as cities recoup those funds for electric vehicles, right? If they're not buying gas, they're not paying gas tax. And so there was a lot of talk about the way that they would be offsetting that and trying to figure out how to make that so that cities would not be hurt in that process. So there were some very interesting breakout sessions for that we're keeping an eye on. As far as a community update, the Westfield Park, we've had lots of questions about that. The Westfield Park went out to bid, and we received back bids on that. Every single one of those bids were over the amount that we had in the impact fees to build that park. And we have a considerable amount in there. And so we were thinking that what we did was a redesign where we had a landscape architect go back and remove some of the retaining walls and some things on that west side. And we're going to slope that down now. So the restroom design is complete. We have that landscape plan is almost complete. So you will see construction start on the park within the next 2 weeks. So we've got the restroom design. We've got that all out. It's ready to go. So the fill dirt's been brought in. And this week, the little kids' shade structure started going up on that. Yeah, it was supposed to be done. So hopefully it is. JD does such a great job. The TRE Frisbee Golf Course, that one we've reported, that one had the signs installed. So you should be able to go down there, play. That Eagle Scout project is done. It should have, it's got concrete pads, the signs up. So that's good to go. The Tokerville Parkway, we've had lots of questions about this. Phase B is currently under construction. We've been addressing the rocks on the roadways, the dust, some of the traffic speeds near TRE and Choya, some of the signing. We have weekly safety meetings and coordination meetings here at Town Hall on Thursdays, and they're well within their permits. We had a video. I don't know if you still have that video, but we'll show that video in just a minute. It's just a real quick clip of that. We had people asking if they could go out and drive the parkway, and the answer to that in short is no. It's an active construction site, so we can't have people out there driving it. That's set to be completed. Their schedule says they'll be completed in March. So we would have the grand opening after that. We completed the filling of potholes at Anderson Junction. That water line project is also complete. So we've been working hard to take culinary water to Anderson Junction. We worked with the water district to complete that project. As far as the off-road, the OHV grant that Riker was mentioning, this year that was awarded in Washington County for, the request was for $660,000 to rehab the road to there. Those discussions are still ongoing. We don't know when the funding will actually hit, but it was applied for. Greater Zion played a big role in that. They did a lot of the submitting, and so did the DRATS, which is the off-road trails. Tokerville City, we did not submit a letter of support for that. Council gave that direction, so we did not submit a letter of support. Some of our concerns were just that we don't have side-by-side businesses here, and so as far as from a commercial perspective, we were really trying to figure out how we would be able to contribute financially. It would come out of our property tax. And outside of that, that's a regional water facility up there on Springs Drive. We have our pump house on one side and a tank on the other, a water tank on the other. So widening that road, we just feel like there maybe needs to be a little more planning put into that before we do it. But that has funded. And so that we'll see. We're going to go to some meetings in the coming weeks on that with Hurricane City, BLM, Greater Zion, the county, lots of people in that room, Hurricane and Lavercan. So, and then our code enforcement officer is Jason Levitt. That council made that decision at the last meeting, so that he still needs to come in and be sworn in, but he's going to be working with John Postard and be working on some of these complaints that we've received. So I know we've had some different complaints submitted. We do have those in a folder, and he is going to start working on those written complaints. Those need to be submitted formally on the website. As far as economic growth, tonight we're going to hear about the general plan. So we're excited about that. It's been a long time coming. The website, we've got that all set. They're just reviewing now some of like the actual font, the typeface, and whether it's going to be all caps or it's going to be sentence structure. So they're just looking at some of those final. We've got the content in, so that is scheduled to go live within the next week or two. We have our final meeting this coming week. And then, yeah, again, just to remind everybody that you can apply for permits and things online. You can renew those permits online. Nightly rentals, after council, we now have 2 permits available, only 2 left in the city. So if people need to apply, I would suggest that you put in those applications if that's what you're looking for. One other thing that we wanted to mention was that the water district has been advertising the grass rebate pretty heavily. And we just want to remind citizens that we are working on a landscape ordinance, but we want to be very careful and cautious and strategic with that. We are the only city that is a member of the Regional Water Supply Agreement that has not passed a landscape ordinance. And we will, obviously, because we're part of the Regional Water Supply. We just wanted to kind of make sure they were coming out with new standards, and we wanted to make sure we had those standards first. So we have those. Riker has been working really hard on getting a draft version for you. So if you live in Tokerville and you start ripping out your grass thinking that you're going to go to the district and get the $2 a square foot rebate, you won't qualify for that yet. You've got to go to the district and put in a plan, but we have to pass a landscape ordinance before our residents can qualify for that. So that's important. The other thing that I wanted to just mention is that we are going to be having an open house to discuss the logo, the city logo. That'll be coming up in November. And so we just wanted to let you know that we're going to be presenting some new logos. We've got about 7 or 8 designs. It's been through lots of rounds of review. We want to present those. We're asking for feedback and wanting to see about possibly having the logo that we currently have become our seal, the official seal of the city, and then having a separate logo that is easier to print, that's cheaper to print, that's more affordable, economical. We've got all the numbers in there. Anyway, so you'll be seeing an open house for that. And then the other thing that we've got is a survey coming out that we really would like some feedback. Down at Center Street Park, we have 2 pickleball courts currently, and we have a basketball court where the paint is off of that. And so we've had people ask us if we could turn that basketball court into a pickleball court, which we could, but we are just going to put out a survey and see what residents think. If you'd like us to either keep it the way it is with just the current pickleball courts and the basketball court, if you'd like us to convert that to a pickleball court and relocate the basketball hoop somewhere else, or if you just think we just need to leave everything the way it is. So we are going to have a survey about that, but currently we have people who want to rent that. And so what they do is they go down to the basketball court and they take blue painter's tape and they tape the lines for a pickleball court and then still play. And so if you look at that aerial right there. So currently we have the 4 pickleball courts, which we are going to have those resurfaced. We have the quotes and everything for that, but that you can see that oval, that's the basketball court. It's big enough for a pickleball court. We would need to fence it and have it painted while they're resurfacing the others. But it's an option we're going to put out there to the public and see what you think. Or if we should maybe just extend the pad we already have and put, another pickleball court in between and just leave that basketball court the way it is. So just a couple of different options down there. We just have lots of people wanting to rent the pickleball courts. And so they're just kind of making their own on that basketball court. So that's something that you're going to see. That's just kind of in our community events, but that's what we've got going on.
Okay. Wow, very informative. Thank you. That will take us to our business items. F1, discussion on ordinance 2023 general plan applicability to modify the consistency policy. Riker?
I can. Do you want me to take it? The general plan, the applicability, we've had this before Planning Commission a couple of times. I know it was heard at council, and I know that Wayne was there, and so was Stacy, and that was discussed. We went back and looked through. We were trying to remember if it had come to Planning Commission, and then if the direction was just to leave it the way it was or what it was. But when we went back and looked through the meeting minutes, it actually had gone through Planning Commission, and there was, and it was tabled, we were going to do legal review of that. And then as we got doing that, we were going with the general plan. And so then we started waiting on seeing where we were going to be with the general plan and what that was going to say and consulting them. And so it went through council and now it's back. So there are 2 different things going on here. For one, which I'm sure you're all familiar with this, you've heard it a couple of times now, but just for the public, in the actual general plan, Daisy, if you want to pull up the current general plan. In the current general plan, the first paragraph, we just need to clean it up and make it consistent of whichever way you want to go or make a recommendation. Tonight is discussion only, but there won't be any action. but on the current general plan, if you scroll to the very first paragraph, Days, and then if you scroll in on that, then you'll see, note where you were, and then just scroll out just a little bit here. It says, let's go, I think it's back up just a little bit. Hold on one second. Days, just scroll for the word where it says advisory. And it says that, if you look and it says, the plan is an advisory document that is designed to provide a formal policy foundation for enhancing city and community relations. And then it goes on to say pursuing, you can read that part. But the main thing that we're trying to clear up here is that in this plan, it says the plan is an advisory document. And then when you look at our actual ordinance in the consistency policy, it references zone changes specifically and says that zone changes must comply with the general plan, which makes the plan regulatory rather than advisory. And so we've got to clean this up and we've got to get it consistent because currently they don't match. And so it's before you for discussion. I know some people have felt strongly that it needs to stay is that some people feel like it needs to be advisory. Some people feel like it needs to be regulatory. And so this is one thing that's being debated. There's a bill that's going to be heard at the legislature that addresses this exact situation. So we need to just kind of go through this and see. It's causing legal issues for our city in particular that I'm going to defer to legal as far as what we can say or not say about legal issues. But this is becoming a legal issue, so it has to get solved. That's really where we are with it. So I don't know if you want to take it from here on that. I know it's just really it's advisory versus regulatory.
We had a discussion at the city council and they asked for us to have a discussion here at Planning Commission. They asked if I could be here, Riker, and to talk about an apparent contradiction and between our current general plan, the one that we are looking at adopting, and our general plan consistency policy. After it is identified in 10.7.2, we've got this language that's been in our code for a long time. And it indicates that in addition to all public streets, parks, utilities, and public buildings, it says that zoning must be in conformance with the general plan. So the question becomes, Daisy, if you could assist and go to that general plan future use map, one that I had pulled up for the council. I put Daisy on the spot, it's down right there, okay? So this is page 14 of the proposed general plan for that we're going to discuss in our next agenda item. You can see this is the future land use map. Under the state law, that it says that you may have a future land use map. So I look at that and I say, okay, what do we have here? Actually, I'm guessing this one is not. Is this our current general plan? Because the current one on
That's
page
our
14
current general plan.
That's our current general
not the
plan.
proposed.
The
That's the
proposed
current.
one will have a bunch of gray and some of that yellow where Firelight is at, but it just has gray. And you have three colors. You have open space. You have your MU20. You've got commercial, and
So what you're talking about?
yes, this is
Page
the one that I'm
14.
talking about. Page 14 of the new general plan is what I want to focus on. Okay, right there. So you can see how that is high level, very general. You've got areas along where Firelight is located that is in gray, and it shows that that's a MPDO. And you don't have much more than that. So when someone comes in to ask for a zone change, we would be looking at this, and if we adopt our general plan, and we would say, okay, does this strictly apply or is it not? And this map tells us what the future land uses should look like. And if it doesn't match that, then we'd say, okay, what do we have to do? And Wayne, we've had this discussion multiple times. Well, it can't not comply with the general plan, so we have to go and amend the general plan, its future land use map, to then show an area to do that. And what I want to do, Daisy, if you could pull up in the SharePoint folder that the council members have, there is one item called Forward General Plan Draft. Under this discussion item, it's an email from me to Riker. And I spend a bunch of time discussing a few things. If you guys want to look at it in your SharePoint, it says forward, it's an email, Forward General Plan Draft.
I think just have you pull it up. There's other
Okay.
info on that email.
Okay,
That's attorney-client.
well, I need,
I would say just email it right back
Okay.
to you. Don't upload it.
no, can you just open up the link? There's two links that I want to show to the
Just
blank.
link.
You, yeah, that email, you can just open up the first of the two links. It's a copy of Washington City's general plan. Okay, this is the future land use plan in Washington City. And if you can zoom that in a little bit, it's pretty specific. There's a lot of different colors. It shows all major roadways, and it is narrowed down specifically to parcels of property. Now, if you'll go and click on the second link, Daisy, in that email, this is the interactive version of that same map right there. And she can zoom in, and Daisy, if you'd zoom in right by the freeway at the Green Springs exit, right there. We're all pretty familiar with this exit. And I want the north side of Green Springs. Go a little bit further north up by 15. Going a little further north, a little bit further north. A little bit further north, keep going. There's your intersection right in there, okay? So say I wanted to, I owned a couple of these crimson red parcels, and they're a type of commercial that wouldn't allow me, you can see how specific this map is, can't you? You can see it is by parcel, and it has roads and everything, and it has all of the different things. If I wanted to develop a charter school on two of these red crimson parcels up here, but because of their zoning, I would have to change it to a community commercial zone instead of a retail commercial zone, okay? What that would mean under their ordinances, they have a strict compliance. I would have to go and amend this map to change those two red parcels right there to what is an orange parcel, which is community commercial, okay? And then, and only then, could I apply for a zone change to actually change my zoning to community commercial. So it's a two-step process. You amend your general plan, and then you apply for a zone change, okay? My point is, Daisy, if you could look back to our map that's in our proposed general plan, page 14, go back, that one right there. How can we be anything but specific or anything but general with that type of map? We have no way. Can I identify a parcel? Is it in the gray or is it in the green? We could zoom that thing in as big as we wanted. It's not interactive, and we have no way of telling. And generally, it's a concept. It's telling us that highway commercial should be that red. We can see all the gray that is master plan, but it doesn't even, we know specifically what areas of Firelight are be commercial and what areas of Firelight are be residential, but we don't even have that gray broken down into that. That's how high level this type of map is. The only way that this type of general future land use map works with works if there is no strict compliance requirement. Either you have strict compliance like we have in our 1072 and you spend a couple $100,000 in land planning, interactive mapping, and doing that, or you can't do it. Because Washington City's is regulatory. It's not advisory. It's not general, it's not high level, it's specific and it's detailed. But ours, which is not dissimilar to probably 90% of all the municipalities in Washington County, is general like this because it has to be advisory and not regulatory. It is a guide, but it is not. But we have this problem because when someone comes for a zone change, we say, doesn't comply with the general plan. Okay. We have people who are challenging zone changes in lawsuits within our city saying, didn't comply with that zone change, did not comply with the general plan, and you have a strict compliance requirement. And we're spending tens of thousands of dollars in legal fees defending that. Okay. So I didn't know what our new general plan was going to look like, and I didn't know if it was going to be more specific, more like into Washington City's. They have that map broken down by areas of city. You've got Green Springs, you've got the central downtown, you've got the Washington Fields, you've got the area west by the Southern Parkway. They have things broken. You have the Coral Canyon area broken down, and they have different planning objectives for each area and different specific things, and we don't have that. So I'm not saying that this is a bad general plan because it's the same type of general plan that most municipalities have, but it's a challenge to say that this, we can say, for us to say it does or doesn't violate this based on how general that map is. And that's all of this discussion that I had with the council, and they asked if I could, if Afton and myself and Riker could bring that up with you guys and address this, because you're next going to hear this general plan, and I don't want you to think this general plan is bad in any way, because I've read it and it's good, but it is written general. It doesn't have our city broken out into areas and having specific planning objectives for along the Tokerville Parkway corridor. It doesn't have things like that. It's just general in general. And if we're going to be general, then we can't have strict compliance. If we're going to have strict compliance, then we need to not adopt this, and we need to go back and do a lot of planning.
And just to follow that up, Heath, I know we're going to hear the general plan next. Daniel Jensen is here. He is the representative from Sunrise who did our general plan with other people at Sunrise, obviously. We had a conversation before this after the city council meeting. We've had lots of, you can come if you want. I'm not sure. But we actually had Daniel do some research on this, and he's got a few thoughts here.
Yeah, that's great. And I'm going to back up. I've been a little surprised to see the nature of those requirements. I haven't seen requirements like this. When you're talking about specific versus general, you've been specifically talking about Attorney Snow. That's not your first name, though.
No, it's Heath.
Okay. I just like that. So you've been specifically talking about the zoning, but in the ordinance itself, it says something like land use, parks, trails, utilities,
Yes, because
government buildings.
because in the state code, when it talks about general plans, it says that That, well,
Well, and
The
I think
exact
that's what
language.
he's saying is
So-
this isn't just zone changes. It's everything that's going to be regulatory.
Yeah, and as
Yeah.
I read that from the consultant side,
Yeah.
so if I'm stepping into the community and I see that that's the ordinance, how I interpret that is I need to provide the community with a regulatory GIS map that shows where your sewer laterals are, where your water
So
lines
that
are,
we
your
can-
secondary, your culinary water, and that's regulatory. And if we go and we modify a piece of property and we change a public utility easement and we shift where, I don't know if it's Dominion or whoever it is you have out here,
Mhm.
you shift where a utility line is, you have to amend your general plan because we're amending the GIS map, which shows where that utility line is.
I totally agree with
And
you.
I've never heard of anything like that before. I have seen that there are communities here and there, I've only seen a couple, where the land use portion is regulatory, but they do exactly what Washington City does, where you can tell they have an in-house GIS department that does this work in-house, where they can go on and update their zone map, their GIS map, and their general plan land use map all concurrently.
Mhm.
And then they say that that map, which again is all three of those, is regulatory. Now, my concern about doing that is even if you have the capacity to do that, which with Tokerville and most
don't.
communities, we don't.
We
I've
don't.
worked in bigger cities and
Yep.
even bigger cities, you don't, is you lose sight of what the general plan is. And the general plan, that map in the general plan, it's really general, like you're saying. It's just kind of a guide to help inform how you do the zone map, which is your regulatory component. And what you want to focus in the general plan is those goals, the vision, the objectives. And I kind of thought maybe those are also regulatory, but it looks like that component might not be regulatory under the current code. It's more just the map that's regulatory. But we lose focus from the general plan being a guide to help focus discussions for city council, planning commission, and staff to say, hey, the next 5 years, we want to focus on these big picture projects. And we shift it to a map. We shift it to what really is like a GIS map. So that would be my concern, is even if you had the capacity to do a GIS map like that, we lose that focus. So with that, what Afton was mentioning is I did talk with the state ombudsman office. I talked to the lead attorney, Jordan Collimore. I asked him, do you see communities that make it regulatory? And he goes, I've seen it before. I really do not recommend it. If you make it regulatory, it means you need to amend your general plan every single time you make a change. And you run the risk that if you don't do it quite right and you have a conflict, then there's a conflict and that could lead to other issues. Also, you have to do the noticing requirements every time. That requires noticing it in a paper. It requires noticing all the affected entities, which include the utility companies, any other jurisdiction that could be impacted by a general plan amendment generally is required by law to be noticed each time. So now we're noticing every single time we're doing a little change. So it's good to keep your general plan more broad so you don't have to amend it very often at all. As a general rule, you want to update your general plan every 5 or so years. That's when you want to amend the general plan. Of course, if something big happens in your community, you amend it, but we don't want to be amending it, several times a year or every month, because we run additional risks and we incur costs. The other thing is with the land use map, we have making it regulatory versus advisory. We also have making it specific versus general. And he said that the best practice is to make it general. That allows your board, your planning commission, to make recommendations and allow the city council to use their legislative discretion to make these decisions. If we make the map specific, even if it's advisory, then we kind of take away, or I should say, maybe we put city council in positions where they're making recommendations that might go against that map, or just creating more conflict. Because at the general plan level, we're not bringing all the property owners in. We're not going through GIS on each property. That's going to be very expensive. The institutional knowledge is with that community, with the neighborhood. So the land use map is intended to be big picture, big idea, to help create informed decisions but not to be a GIS map. So that was concurred by Jordan Collimore, lead attorney. And I think that's about all I have to say. Do you have any questions for me about that?
One question we did have when we talked to you was, that I asked you very specifically, was in the general plans that you do, how many of them are advisory and how many of them do you see that are regulatory?
Every one we've
And
done.
where we fall. in
Yes,
that.
everyone we've done is advisory, and every map we've done is general. And that is also the feedback from the communities, is they want to keep it general. That way they're legislative. So as an example, right here, where there's a color, that color represents several different zones. And so the city council still has complete discretion to say, okay, this is a commercial area. We can now determine exactly which properties belong under commercial and exactly which zones belong in that commercial, rather than having some outside consultant or some, former council or former staff members
Yeah.
making those decisions in a general plan that then has to get amended. So we see in the plans we do, in the plans we redo, when we go to communities, when we look at their existing plans, that an advisory plan that is general in terms of its land use map is the standard in the state. And that's true with rural communities and with the large urban, like even in Wasatch Front.
That was the question we had. We just said where we've got advisory listed in the document, where we have an ordinance that says that it's regulatory, well, it says must, says shall. That's what we asked. So we just said, as our consultant that we are paying to advise us for the general plan, what do you see? And
Yeah.
they said 100% of them that they've done are advisory.
100%?
Of the ones that we've
Summarize.
done. Now, there are ones out there, like Washington City. Typically, we see that if a community is doing that, they want to exert a lot of control. And so they'll do their general plans in-house. They also have a lot of resources or are willing to invest in all of those resources to do that. I see so few that have it be regulatory and have it be specific like that. Even if they're doing them in-house, they still keep it broad. Even a city like Provo or Salt Lake will keep it a little bit more broad, even though they have hundreds of staff members.
So who did this map here that we're looking at?
So that one would be this is the new plan, and this is one I created.
So why didn't you just do the gray the way we already know that it's zoned or going to be zoned or
So
whatever?
the gray,
Why is it just gray?
the gray is Firelight, which
Yeah.
has a number of different zones. And so in the, what's it called? The legend, it basically just says that it's MPDO, and then it lists, actually, I think it just said to refer to the development agreement, because the development agreement calls out this,
In
the specific numbers of acres.
Some moving of areas.
Right. You'd have to amend the development agreement and amend the general plan if we were to put it in both places. So we basically said, go look at the development agreement recorded on the property. And that development agreement does say the exact properties, the number of acres. It has land uses in it. So not only does it have a zone, but it says which land uses belong in that zone. It's quite detailed. So we didn't replicate that in the general plan. And we worked with staff in creating.
A couple of other thoughts in the state code where, all cities are required by the Utah Municipal Code, Title 10, Chapter 9A. Every city has to have a general plan. And they indicate by state statute some basic things that has to be in there. But then they give this clause that says a municipality may determine the comprehensiveness, extent, and format of their general plan. So there's a lot of variance when you look from city to city. What becomes an issue, and I think what our strict compliance has grown from, this has been around since 2005 when general plans were first required. 10406 says, after a legislative body has adopted a general plan, no street, park, or other public way, ground, place, or space, no publicly owned building or structure, and no public utility, whether publicly or privately owned, may be constructed or authorized unless and until it conforms to the current general plan. So what that says is that it's advisory for everybody else, but as a municipality, we've got to put our roads where we have them identified in our general plan. And if we have a component of our general plan that talks about parks and recreation, we generally say that there needs to be a park over here and over there. It essentially says we need to comply. It's not advisory. We've got to follow our own general plan in that sense. But my problem is when you read 10.7.2 of ours, it says a bunch of these very same things, parks and streets and stuff like that. Then it says, and zoning. That's where we have the problem. And zoning.
Well, I don't know that it's a problem, but that's where it's different.
Yes, a contradiction. Because when it says zoning, that applies to everybody's zoning. That's not just the city. We have to comply. Our public uses of public property that the city owns, we have to comply. But when we start adding in our strict compliance in 10.7.2 to say that all zoning shall comply with our general plan, then we have the problem that we're in right now. So I think the council just wanted to bring this to your attention and say, hey, our general plan's coming down, and even our newest version of our general plan continues to be general and advisory in nature and content. So can we go back and readdress this general plan applicability issue, this 10.7.2?
Anybody have any questions?
Yeah, I got lots.
Yeah.
Anybody else want to go before me?
Well, what I've heard is everybody's contradictory. I'm not getting the facts. I'm not getting the truth. It's that everybody has an idea on what they think and what they want here. I don't see anything in front of me, a state code dictating anything. I'm having a hard time. I can understand what he's telling me. I'm trying to understand why Riker's reciting stuff that's not happening. It's not happening right now. I don't care what the lobbyists are doing up there with the legislators. Those bills you keep presenting to me, they might never happen. So I don't want to run scared because you're trying to throw a bill at me that's maybe never going to happen. And then I got Heath over here trying to explain what we need to do. We need to change that map. I don't think you got to do it drastically.
Well,
I think you could change it a little bit.
Last time when it came before us, we voted to not adopt the ordinance that modified that language, to keep it as it is and to recommend that it be denied and that we do more specific planning. And that's where it's dropped.
So our recommendation was to table it last time.
So can I ask-
And to allow staff to do that.
To
but
look
yeah.
into more detailed
Yeah.
planning, I guess.
So why was it dropped? In March, we made a motion to leave it as it is, change the map. April, you made the motion. You instructed me exactly what to say with the motion. I shouldn't say you make the motion because you eloquently said you can't make a motion. I made the motion. So that's March, April. In May, it was supposed to be on the agenda and staff took it off. And then all of a sudden, 5 months later, it goes in front of city council and it's presented to them as if we're not doing anything on it. And that is just flat out, I need to calm down a little. That's flat out wrong.
That could have been some
It was
misunderstanding on my
flat
part.
out misrepresented to city council. Should have never gone there. You guys, staff, should have done what we told you to do. It's that simple. We've had this whole conversation that we just had
I'm
today.
gonna interrupt you right now, and I'm going to let you know that it was tabled for legal review. So staff did do what they were asked to do. So I'll let you speak, but you need to understand that staff did do what they were asked to do, and it was tabled for legal review, and that's where it ended.
And why
So
did it come back to us?
tabled for legal review doesn't mean that it doesn't come back to planning commission.
It still should have come back before it went, you took it to city council. It's under legal review, but you took it to city council, so that is a poor excuse. I'm sorry.
It isn't. There are executive sessions that you haven't been parts of, so it actually is not.
It is. I'm sorry. I'm greatly annoyed with this whole thing because we have very clearly stated our position. And in city council, I go to city council, I don't even know what's on the agenda. I see this, I'm like, okay, this is going to be interesting. I start hearing these things and it's going to cost hundreds of thousands of dollars and it's going to be a tax increase and on and on and on. And planning commission hasn't done anything. And I'm just like, wait a minute, this is a bunch of crap. It's not accurate. So has anybody even spoken to Washington City? We keep referring to Washington City. Has anybody spoken to them?
That was the legal review that Heath did.
I did. I spoke with their city attorney and I spoke with Drew Ellerman, their director of community development.
I just spoke with him Monday.
Okay.
He says they love their stuff.
Yeah,
He says they spent $20,000 doing it.
well, they did.
$20,000.
They did it in-house.
No,
To
they didn't do
outsource.
it in-house. Drew's the one who hired the people. It was $12,700 for the general plan and $7,300 for the GIS. $20,000 is not hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's not a tax increase. Besides, if we like Washington so much, let's just copy it and then change our map. Then we don't have to pay to change the general plan. This is just, it stinks. I don't agree with it. We've already stated, we can have another vote. I mean, that's whatever, but we've already stated, and I think you guys are underhanded by trying to go behind our backs just to get what you want.
Okay.
It's not right.
So I've gone through the Washington City's general plan, 61 pages. It's not a crazy drawn out. On their website, they do have a bunch of different maps in
They
there.
have got that interactive.
They do have a future land use map, which I think is right down the line of what we were discussing in our last meeting, and in our instruction to staff was to use that and let's work on making that. Another thing is I've lost my train of thought on that, but it's got some policies in the general plan, but it is, I think the specificity in ours is zoning. So it doesn't need to be specific on all those other items that are in a general plan because our code says zoning and also parks and that, but that applies to, I don't care who's doing it. That's going to be part of, because that's a city thing. So, and state code. State code does state that it's an advisory guide. Second, and then we've talked about this. The next one right down says which effect can be determined by code, something along those lines. So this is not something we couldn't do. To me, it seems like a very simple. Maybe I just made that a little bit easier than I should have, but it is not something we can't do, and it's not something that's not done. I do think that Tokerville is in a situation or a circumstance right now where we've been the same for years and years, very little growth. Now we're looking at this phase of tons of growth. Most little towns out there, shouldn't say that. I don't know what they do, but we're in a spot right now where we have a lot of growth coming. I think it's a great time for the city to get a hold of that as opposed to generalized and this and that and hodgepodge. And to me, a future land use map gives us a lot of ability to control the growth of our city the way we want to see it grow, not the way the developers coming in want to grow it.
So in speaking with Washington, I asked them why they're doing it the way they're doing it. He says, it's very simple. It gives them more control, gives them another tool in their toolbox. He says, why would you take tools out of your toolbox when you're going through your land planning and having people come in and wanting to change zoning and such? He says, if somebody wants to come in and build something on a parcel of land and they don't really want it there, they just say, sorry, it doesn't fit our general plan. He says, most of the time they go away and you don't have to deal with that. Now, if they're persistent, then you go through the process of looking at changing the general plan. And then you have a hearing on it.
And I just want to make this clear. It's not changing the whole general plan.
No,
It's only
just that-
changing
just
the
that
map
parcel.
in the general plan.
Just that
It's
parcel.
updating
Just
your
the map. Yes, thank you very much. He says, why would you not? And he tells me that there are multiple, and he did name the names of the cities who are going to be using their method of making it regulatory because it gives you more tools and it gives the public more say. And when you change the general plan, the map, you have to have a public hearing in front of city council. You have to have a public hearing in front of planning commission. So the public has 3 opportunities to have their say. I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that's a great thing to allow them to have some say. You have to change, you have 2 public hearings, one for the general plan change and one for the zone change, and you have a public hearing for the general plan change with city council. Those are good things. So there's some really good reasons for doing what Washington is doing. And according to Drew,
Drew's a proponent of it.
he
I mean,
is.
He was the mastermind.
Yeah, he
Riker,
is. And he loves it. So, and we keep referring to it. Why not just do it?
I was trying to use it as an example.
I understand.
The differences between ours as we're looking at adopting and what they have done, and just said, hey, there are 2 different ways of going. This is a regulatory way. This is an advisory way. And if we're going to go advisory, then we need to modify 10.7.2, at least the zoning language of it.
Mhm.
If we don't want to do that, like you said, and you just gave all the great reasons why, then we need to go and make this a lot more detailed so that we can regulate through it.
So can I ask one question on that?
Yeah.
What is wrong with leaving the map, maybe clean it up a little bit more detailed, but leave it that way? And then as we go through and change zones, then we'll go through and modify them.
Well, I don't know that
I
there's
mean-
been, I look at a map like that, and no offense, you indicated that you were the preparer of it, but I don't know that there's been really much.
There's not much work.
I could pull up, one of the GIS maps from the county, and with some of the tools, I could make that map. Doesn't necessarily mean, and to me, it more tracks what our current zoning is
Mhm.
than what our future zoning should be. There's not a lot of, and I would hope that there would be acknowledgement that there's not a lot of like pure land planning involved in the creation of this map.
Right.
So we have a GIS map that has all our zoning in it now.
Yes.
So.
Interactive.
And
An
interactive.
current zoning.
Current zoning. I mean, it would be something we could lay that out. That could be our map. And then we can add in future zoning on a separate map or however we'd like it to be, but we could be pretty specific. I don't have the language right now, but in Washington City Code, they talk about how to amend where boundaries are. Not all the boundaries are on property lines. They actually say boundaries in the middle of the street and how to deal with that. They talk about how to deal with boundary issues
Actually
and
do.
things like that.
We've gotten that
So,
specific.
So Riker, we do have that map, something that we can already modify and do those things with, right? So it's not something we're doing new. Okay, Wayne, have you got any questions or thoughts?
Yeah,
Before we open up well, we don't have a public hearing.
This is a discussion.
I don't see, if we have a zoning map, that we even have to okay a zone change. There's nothing in there says we have to give them the zone change.
Correct.
It's
No.
not a freebie, like I'm hearing over here that they get what they want when they want. I mean, if we have a somewhat better plan and we want it, R120 there, it needs to stay R120. It doesn't need to be busted down and changed. That's what we wanted. Then we can say no. I'm a
Well,
pretty
and
good
another
proponent.
part of that is, and I don't know, and maybe Heath can weigh in on this, but with the changes that we're hearing coming, and I know they're not there yet, but if they do come, they're taking away land use from or zoning from Planning Commission and making it a staff level or administrative decision.
That can never happen, Sean, because if you made totally all the decisions for zoning to staff, can you imagine what the city would look
So
like?
Oh my
my
goodness.
point is to say this
It
is
has
that
to have
Wayne.
it has to have public opinion. And I,
so that's
You know,
and that's what
let
I'm
me-
going
let
to
me
get to right now.
continue on here.
Let me finish my thought here, and then I'll let you go, Wayne. So
Let me
what I'm
read
saying is if they do make that administrative, and we put in that says, hey, our general plan is regulatory, so to speak, or zoning is, then that makes it to where they have to go in and do a general plan amendment to do the zone change. So that means that it now makes that have to
Two-step
go,
process.
makes it a two-step process.
Like Stacy
Still might not get it.
eloquently said,
Well, I know,
it makes
but-
it a 3 public hearing process.
Yeah. And so it's a good thing to put in there if we want to make sure that the people still have a say on what happens based on the general plan input to what happens to the city.
I want the people to have that say.
I do too.
I'm the bigger proponent for
I
this.
absolutely do.
And no reason I want to change it, but maybe it could be tweaked somehow, but it's a great opportunity for the public to come before the city council and make the city council hear it instead of just the planning commission. This is what this was all about. I tried to do some research on when this came in effect years and years ago, but it's a good thing. I mean, it makes the people aware. You're giving the people a chance to put their opinion in front of somebody else besides the planning commission. And there's a lot of good input that comes into there. And maybe it's not a bad idea.
Well, to me, when I read it, it's very deliberate. I mean,
It is.
I mean,
It's-
I know that they know that zoning was not part of that part of the
Yeah.
of the original, and they added it. And they also say the city has adopted a policy. That means that they thought about that before they put that. You know what? We're going to make the general plan mean something in Tokerville. So,
It does.
and I
just-
believe you said it was in 2005 that ordinance was created. So it's been a long time, and back when they started with general plans, and they wanted back then the general plan to mean something.
I guess that's why I'm fighting it so hard, because we ignore 10.7.2. We make zone changes. We do things. We're not complying. We don't comply. That's why I'm fighting it. And I'm going to go down to something somebody wrote here. If Tokerville wants to act like a bigger municipality, then its general plan and future land use map component of the general plan should be way more detailed. With persons like Wayne Olson coming on the council at the end of the year, what kind of person am I?
Well, you're a strict compliance guy. I wrote that. That's my
That's
my
a little-
email to
Kind of maybe a little derogatory. It's a good shot. I like it. But it's-
no. Well, Wayne, is it accurate? Own it.
with persons like me. So
Well, that's
I'm
what
glad to have you around.
No,
I'm looking around
Hey,
thinking,
wait.
what kind of person am I? And you probably shouldn't have made that statement, but I am right. I like the applicability cause because it makes everybody be accountable for. I don't want to go to the city council and just have willy-nilly. I want to hear what the people say, and I want to make my decision on what's best for the town, what's best for the people. I want them to have that say, and I'm not going to give up this applicability plan. I think we can tweak it like he says. I think we can fix that to make it more centralized. And if we have to change some kind of wording in here, we need to keep that. I really believe we need to keep that. Stacey, I'm totally in agreement with that. And I'm also not agreeing with, we didn't ignore this. We were waiting for it to come back to us, and it did not come back to us.
Well, what happened was the general plan came and no one quite knew how detailed or undetailed it would be. And it came and it was general and advisory. And that's when I responded to Riker and I said, we've got a problem brewing here. We adopt this general plan and we keep this applicability, this strict compliance requirement, and we're going to have a straight contradiction continuing on and on. So either we need to fix one or the other. And you guys are suggesting fix the specificity of the planning, which is fine if that's your prerogative. And I understand all the reasoning, but that's what I'm saying. Even more so, we're going to have a plan because Wayne, you've been very specific about that. And I have no qualms with saying in an email, the Wayne Olsons of the world is going to say, and you've beat that drum for so long. I almost say it's the Wayne Olson rule.
I have beat that drum, but nobody's complied with it.
Well, I get it.
Code,
I
it's
get
code.
it. That's what you say. And to an extent, it is true. You always say, this isn't complying with the general plan. Why are we giving it a zone change?
Yeah, why?
And you point to 10.7.2, and that's exactly why we have this problem. And all I'm trying to say is,
I
hey,
guess all I'm trying to say is we should have been
That's-
complying with that all along until we changed it.
well, can't go back. We can
No,
only
we can't
work
go
on the
back.
future.
We want to go forward and we want to.
So
do
that's what that's all I was simply trying to say was, let's figure this out.
Well, I think we missed an opportunity because we gave that direction back in April, and and to give us a Sunrise time to kind of look at what the direction we were looking to go, maybe looking at those maps, that kind of thing. I understand that, to have you do that and then find out the council doesn't want to go a certain way or whatever can cause some issues as well. But anyways, it's unfortunate that we weren't able to work on a better map back then and do those kinds of things. We've already, and I don't, unless anybody's minds have been changed, do we have a different feeling on what a motion would be to staff and what direction we want to see this go?
So I know we're not making a motion.
No, well, we can make a motion.
This is just discussion.
Yeah.
But what I'd like to read is our motion last time. This came from our attorney. Says table this matter, instruct staff to amend ordinance to keep the basic body of our consistency policy, but include a reference to the current general plan and zoning map as amended. I think we're all kind of in agreement. That's still the thought.
But
We
the
wanna
idea
tie it to that
was
map.
that that map was going to be more specific.
Yes, that exactly. That's what that says.
Yeah.
So yeah, and part of this, I look at this and part of it is our fault because we didn't follow up and say, hey, wait a minute, where is this? We just made a motion and it's been how many months? I think the planning commission needs to be better. All of us, especially me, needs to be better at keeping track of what we're doing and start pressing staff. Where is this? Give it to us, or at least give us an update on what is happening. Because there are times that, we go through it in March. We went through the exact same thing in May or in April. And then it's like, wait a minute, we just went through this in March, but none of us said, well, we just went through this. And so I think,
And I think we were caught off a little bit just because in that May meeting, it was all let's table it. So we were all kind of ready to
Right.
discuss it.
and then it
but
just kind of
again,
disappeared.
We need to keep that in the back of our minds. And
I don't know, Stacy. I've been going off the reservation for a couple, 3 months, going to other planning commissions. This is a working commission right here. We work at it.
Yes.
We're not. Can you guys hear me? I'm supposed to be talking to this mic better. I'm really impressed how this works compared to a lot of other planning commissions. They're unprepared. So I think we're doing a very good job, but we are dependent on staff, at least to recommend to us a starting point.
I guess what I'm saying is maybe we shouldn't be so dependent on staff because it got lost.
That might be true.
I don't want to.
Unfortunately, I'm going to go to an easier job, obviously, here in January, but
Maybe.
So,
I want to keep it the way it is. If it can be worded better somehow, but I want to keep it where we have compliance and we have control over our city. Because if we don't have control, you're going to have zoning going wild. You're going to not like your city. I guarantee it. It's not going to be, and it's okay to say the word no. It really is. If that doesn't fit the people, it doesn't fit the city's idea, then I'm not afraid to say no. I want that.
So
I want it.
I agree. So looking at the one where we've got it is our general plan applicability 10.7. We've got a yellowed out area that kind of describes one of the conflicts that we have in that sentence is, and I know you've highlighted it. What is it that we're so concerned about in that sentence?
Okay, so let me get back to.
That it says it's a general plan for the community.
General
A
plan.
general
And it-
guide.
Yeah, and I think the general plan, we know what a general plan is, and through state code, the general plan can be made regulatory. The second sentence says a general guide. To me, the code still says the same thing, but maybe that's a little bit, or we could just say, hey, let's take that maybe out. And in the next paragraph, it says the city council has adopted a policy of land use decisions and zoning and all those kind of things. So, I mean, if
I don't know that this may be academic, but the reference to 10.9A 401 isn't
no, it's not correct.
the best
Yeah, I think-
reference to it. But where I'm saying is if you look at the highlighted section. Oh, I'm looking at the one in my email. I highlighted it too. And my point is where it says, for example, zoning.
Yeah,
That if that's what we're keeping, great.
And I think that's the direction we
Either
are.
we
We're
delete
keeping
that out and we're saying the locations of streets and parks and utilities and buildings must be in conformance. That's just like what the state code says.
Yeah. My only reason for bringing this up is that if there is a conflict between the top
Yes.
purpose and the bottom,
7.1
and we
and
want to
7.2.
maintain 7.2 to say what it says,
Yeah,
do we
then
need to change that
yes,
top
I would
to say
agree.
something different?
Because they don't seem to, the purpose doesn't necessarily match. the
Right. And
consistency.
I will say that in Washington
It's
cities,
advisory.
yeah.
Right.
In Washington cities, it talks about, and they've given the general plan a general plan or master plan is how they kind of refer to it. I don't know if that's something that we need to, and this is only for staff to kind of mull over and think about or whatever, but I don't know if that's something we need to look at. Cleaning that up, because I don't mind changing that as long as it keeps the consistency policy where the general plan is utilized during zone changing or zoning. Do we, I guess it's not we don't need to make a motion. So
Right.
staff, is that a good enough direction? We know
I
where we're
actually would
headed.
like to say a couple of things. And I feel like I've listened to each one of the commissioners, and I feel like that, not even I feel like, staff genuinely tries to do what's in the best interest, to provide you information in packets, to provide you timely information, to follow up on things. I think it's important that Planning Commission realizes that the land use authority for the city is city council. When things happen that are above Planning Commission, they're taken directly to city council. That's what happened in May. So when you have questions about that, this was actually taken to city council in May. It was taken privately because of other issues that existed within the city. So to say, oh, staff just didn't follow up on it, or to say, oh, we need to do a better job, which you're ultimately pointing fingers saying we gave direction to staff, which we know would be Riker as the planner, right? But I think that it's important to understand that what Planning Commission is looking at when it comes to land use, and you're looking at things like zone changes or even the general plan, you guys are looking only and solely at land use. There are other liability issues that come before the city that aren't Planning Commission issues. The issues that came before the city that have to do with general plan applicability, zone changes, and other things, those are items that were taken directly because of information that came to the city. They were taken directly to city council. We have, the state code has several reasons why you can have closed sessions, and land is one of them, different elements of land. So when things come that.
Also pending litigation.
And pending litigation, which is exactly. And so when things are taken there, I think it would be really helpful if instead of sitting up here throwing accusations at staff, saying staff either went behind your back or staff didn't do this or staff didn't that, let's have a conversation. Come into our office and let's have a conversation. Let's not wait until it's a meeting and start throwing things out saying staff didn't do this or didn't do that. I think that's really unfair. I think that he works tirelessly to make things happen. When things come to even my attention and I take them to city council, that's our job. So I think that a conversation could go a long way. If you felt like just having that show up on there, maybe a conversation could go a long way the other way as well. So that showed up on city council's agenda after a conversation. That was not in any way an attempt to not allow you to have some sort of say. We knew city council would send it back to you. We needed direction for what they would need to do, and we needed timely direction from city council. So bigger issues than just what you're seeing in front of you and an item that was a discussion or not. I mean, every time that we have to consult legal and that we have to do that, it costs this city a considerable amount of money. To say that it wouldn't result in that, I will tell you that these words right here have cost this city more than what you're saying Washington City even paid to do their entire plan, simply in legal. I see the budget on a daily. I'm telling you right now, this is budgeting. There are all sorts of issues. I also sit on the Southern Utah Land Task Force. I go to that with Darren. It's held at Washington City. Their planner might love it. Their attorney does not. He sat in the same meeting with me and has told me that he does not like that it's regulatory. 2 attorneys from City of St. George show up at that same meeting. And the intent and the purpose is to make sure that City of St. George can have an advisory, not a regulatory, due to legal issues. So there's lots of input. We also have a planner that we have received a grant to try to get this general plan done. I would like to just point out that this general plan, even the amendment to this general plan, is before you because of staff. Nobody in this city was proposing that we would amend this general plan. That came from me as the city manager. I went out and worked with Sunrise to secure a grant to make sure that taxpayers did not have to pay to amend this general plan. As you mentioned, we have massive growth in front of us, massive. The old general plan was lacking. So I went and worked with Sunrise to get a grant to even have a new general plan put before you. The survey that went out, we did a survey, we put out a QR code, we put this on our utility bill. We did a lot that we were not required to do. So when it says that this is an attempt by staff to take away the public's voice, we paper mailed to every address on file in this city a copy of that survey. Some people said they didn't get them. That's on the mail. But that's what we've done to try to do that. We found grant funding to make sure that that wasn't a tax increase. We have gone above and beyond to put this in multiple rounds. We held town hall meetings. We've had multiple rounds of public hearings about this. So I think to say that this is an attempt for staff to either go around planning commission or not let the public have a voice, that's all we're doing is putting it before you. But when this came off of this agenda and it was tabled, and immediately when this was taken to city council in closed, that there are lots of things that are going on that are not an attempt to in any way shortcut the process or take away any sort of recommendation by the planning commission. But city council, as the land use authority for the city, considers more than just this clause when they're doing zone changes. I don't know how else to say it.
I'm going to say just
But-
one thing. I appreciate all the work they do, and I've said that to you many times. And Riker knows how much I appreciate him. One of the things that was said, and I think it is one of those things where it does need to be a good communication both ways. But I watched the city council meeting, and I watched planning commission has done nothing, right? And so you can recommend this, and I'm not trying to say that, but that's the kind of stuff when I hear that, or any of us, because we all heard it. It's something that you say, oh, really? We didn't do anything. So, I mean, I understand the miscommunications and all that. And again, I mean, it's obvious you do a ton of work. There's no doubt about that. But I do think that in order for us to not get where we're starting to think, well, what are they doing? That maybe when we do send it up to council without it coming back to us, that we have that conversation before, instead of me wondering why it did it and then start being like, well, just tell us. Tell us that, hey, you know what? We had this on your agenda. This is here, but we had to move it up. Then we have an idea that's going on, not that we hear in a city council meeting that basically, well, you can do whatever you want because planning commission chose not to do anything with it. Because that's how it came out.
Yep.
That
It
is
wasn't
very
even basically, it was, they refused to act on it.
And so, and
that's
I
just not
don't want to,
accurate.
I don't really want to get into the
Yeah.
meat of this and the mud of this. This is not where this meeting needs to go. But just to say, let's open those lines of communication. If there is a reason, and I think we all understand that there might be a reason, and we know what we can control and what city or council is over. We understand that. Tell us. Don't send it up and then have it be hit in the face, right? So that would be a good thing. If hopefully nobody else has anything to say on this, we can move forward with the recommendation, which is the same as what we did last time virtually.
Right.
Maybe changing some wording in that.
1071.
1071. The basic body being the same. Let's work on figuring out what that map's going to take. Let's, maybe put some numbers together for council that I spoke to Drew as well. And, 8,000 for the GIS map, and they've got a lot of mapping in that. So let's figure all these things out before we take it to council, or And I would imagine we're going to have to bring it back and do a public hearing on it anyway, so.
So I have a
Anybody?
question for Heath.
Mhm.
So since it went in front of city council and
Well-
it needs to be acted upon in a reasonable amount of time,
Yeah.
how much time do we have to actually make changes that we would like to see changed?
You know, there's not a lot of clear case law in Utah on what that is, but in state code, it says that if it's a top-down type of ordinance and a planning commission does not recommend within a reasonable time, it can be deemed denied.
And I think,
Correct.
and-
Or
and
recommended
I might have,
denied.
I read this and I don't, maybe I'm wrong on this, but it says to take action, and take action would be give staff direction on
Yeah,
where to go.
and,
So that's
and I
kind
think
of the-
that's the point. If an action takes 6 months to get all the planning done to make a good map,
Mhm.
then it's reasonable for the planning commission not to act on it for 6 months.
Thank you.
Does that make sense?
But this is just merely discussion. There's no
This is
action.
discussion and it's discussion and also direction. We've said this is what the planning commission wants to do with it. And so we've given direction. Go ahead.
Afton, I would probably suggest, and I'm happy to say this in public meeting, there probably needs to be a discussion on this at the council level and some direction from the council too on how they want to do this, because it sounds to me like the planning commission is firm in what their motion was previously and what they would like to see done. But in their motion, what they're essentially doing is tabling it for an indefinite period of time and asking staff to do more planning and develop a more detailed map, which is fine if the council, who's the land use authority, ultimately agrees with that being the policy of the city. So I don't know how we get, because I would hate to see us then go and spend another $20,000 on this. And the planning commission says, we don't want this to be like this.
City council.
Yeah, it's city council.
Yeah.
Says we don't want this to be like this. So if the council does not want it to be regulatory, and they probably need to have staff, and I'd happy to review it, propose language for 1072 that removes like zoning and send it to them as a top-down request for them to have a public hearing on and make a recommendation, which can be, they've got to go up or down on it at that point in time. But I think that could probably fix this, because it's pretty clear now a couple times that this has been discussed that there may be a division between what planning commission thinks is good policy and what the council. I don't know if I know what the council's thought is on it, to be honest.
Do we
with
need to
you.
make a motion with that? Not that we can make a motion.
No,
tonight, but-
no, because it's not you. I'm just telling Afton, it probably needs to be a discussion and an action item, in the sense that it needs to be an instruction to how Riker and staff goes about putting
Yeah,
a
I'm just making
top-down
notes.
ordinance.
I'm just making notes, and so that we're all clear, including planning commission. Are you asking for me to put this onto city council's agenda at the
Yes.
next regularly scheduled
I think
meeting,
it
which
needs
is
to be.
next Wednesday?
I think it
So
needs to be, because
Let's none of
because-
us be surprised when you see this on the
This is
council
so much-
agenda.
but This is so much better right there. Thank you.
I don't know about top down though,
Well,
because then
it
it
ha-
doesn't, we don't have any input in the top down, because they've already put their input to you and handed it to you, and that's what they want. And it's going to maybe be different than what we want. So we're still going to be stuck in the middle here.
yeah, but Wayne, that is inherent in the nature, the differences between the two bodies and how our state legislature put this together as a recommending body. I just hate to see this city go through a lot more planning and expense, because that's what the planning commission thinks is the right thing to do, then only to have the council not adopt
So
the-
it
a
makes
future land
sense. It
use
makes
plan.
sense to send it to council to say, hey, what direction do you want to take this?
Because the
Once
planning
they
commission's
do
direction is pretty clear.
What they do after that, then it determines where we might
Where we
go
go
with it
next.
after. So they're not going to make the change, or I can't say not, I don't know that. but it would be where do you guys want to go? Okay, that's the direction, then that means what we have to do. Or,
Because like what Afton is saying, the council, they do have to look at some things that are differently than what you guys have to look at.
What
I mean,
appears to me, maybe they're looking at something that's gonna really hurt their decision from the air in here. Gosh, it just seems like you could work together somehow together.
I kind of feel like that might be the
Like
way
a
it
workshop or
is.
something and
Yeah.
pound this thing out between council and that. So there's
you got a
complete
couple-
transparency.
You got a couple council members sitting in the audience and they're listening. They're here for a reason, out of their own time, because they want to hear what your opinions are. So they're more informed. So that this isn't brand new to them, and they're kind of just hearing it explained from the staff. So I think these two are going to be very helpful in that discussion at our next meeting to see. And yeah, let them. If I guess what I'm telling you is, if there's a pretty clear direction from the council that it's going to be advisory,
There's no sense in us doing anything else.
then what do we do?
But
Then
do
what-
that-
Then what is the
If
plan?
it is advisory, then it goes back to us and say, this is the direction we want you to take it.
Yes.
So that-
And we're not going to advise Sunrise to make any additional modifications and stuff like that.
Right.
So,
That makes sense. Okay. So, yeah. All right.
Move on.
Any further discussion needed on that? Hopefully. Okay. All right, that'll take us to our next item, business item F2, discussion on Tokerville City General Plan.
Present.
Please.
Now that you know, we think you're wrong.
Yeah, we will not talk about the map.
Yeah, let's do it. I think we've killed that one many times over.
Yeah. Okay, so Afton already mentioned with the general plan, this all started with a TPA grant that Sunrise helped the city apply for and was received. So Tokerville had a small match, a 7% match, and the rest is a grant through UDOT, which is what funded this project. Periodically, the general plan gets updated. This is the time to update the general plan. So this is pretty standard procedure to come and look at the general plan. We're going to focus on the vision and the goals of this plan rather than the map, which really that's where our focus should be already, is the vision and the goals, the language in the plan. As Afton mentioned just earlier, we did go through a fairly robust public engagement process to make sure we got feedback from the community. That came through pretty loud and clear. I know there's been some concern about how much that got transitioned from the survey and the feedback and into the plan. What I heard loud and clear from the community is we don't want our neighborhoods to change. We want to keep our neighborhoods kind of the same way. We moved here for a reason. We like the look and feel of our streets and our community, and we want to keep it that way. Another component that was loud was we don't want growth. There were also many people that said we know growth is coming and we need to have housing for our children and we need to have housing for me, depending on who I'm talking to, right? Younger people saying, hey, I can't afford a house here and I need to find a house. And then certain individuals saying, I moved here and from the date I moved in, I want no one else to move in. And so, and that date shifted depending on who you're talking to, right? They moved here 2 years ago, it's from that date. And if it's 10 years ago, it's from that date. And so there's clearly a balance to be struck there with growth. One thing we can't exactly balance on, and I had to go through Riker with this, the state requires with the moderate income housing that the city does implement at least 3 of the strategies that are part of this list that you can choose from state code. Several of them are ones that Tokerville clearly would not want. They would be antithetical to any of the feedback received in the surveys. So we try to find the ones that were least, I'm going to say, impactful, maybe, or least against the wishes of the residents, but those are required by state code. So the state code requires, in fact, let's just jump a few slides ahead. It's probably going to be like 3 or 4 slides. Yeah, keep going right here. So let's see. Yeah, the proposal, so a realistic opportunity to meet the need for additional moderate income housing within the city. and to include recommendations to implement 3 or more, like we just talked about, and facilitate a reasonable opportunity for a variety of housing, including moderate income housing, various income levels, for living, working, and living in the community. So we tried to address that, and inherently that does mean growth. That does mean additional housing. So we know that there's an anti-growth sentiment among some residents. And we know that there is a, hey, I need to find housing contingency within the city as well. And we know that the state is telling us that we are mandated to have a plan that can responsibly and reasonably address the needs for growth within the community. We also know from just a really practical standpoint that there's a lot of development that's already been approved. So that Firelight development on the west side and some of the other master planned areas, those have already gone through approval processes. So that alone right there is a lot of our growth. Luckily, I say this with communities I work with all the time, it's wonderful when the new growth doesn't impact the existing community. It's out on the west side. If you live here in Tokerville, your street is going to look the same in 5 years. And I think that's a great thing, because that's your reasonably backed investment expectation. So I hope that came through on the general plan as you looked at it, that existing neighborhoods stay the same, growth, west side, a little bit of adaptive reuse and what that means. So adaptive reuse along Tokerville Boulevard. And what that means is taking existing buildings and allowing them to adapt to the modern economy. Things change over time, families change over time, and a building's 100 years old. How do we get that building to be economically viable in 2023 when it was built in 1897? And so, there's flexibility built in that general plan as a recommendation for zoning to allow adaptive reuse along Main, to keep the neighborhood surrounding Main the same, and to have that growth on the west side. So that's how we try to balance that pressure for growth, balance the state's mandates for moderate income housing and addressing the housing need, and keeping that small town feel, look, charm, keeping the community that is what brought people to Tokerville, whatever the date is they moved to Tokerville. Which I will say, I was a little bit surprised by that data, that you have more recent transplants than I anticipated. I thought this was going to be a community, maybe more like Fillmore, where if you live here now, you lived here in 1980, and that's not entirely the case. Okay, so the elements that were included, land use, transportation, moderate income housing that we talked about, recreation, economic development, historic preservation, and public safety and utilities. So within those, I tried to articulate the justifications, the reasoning, the best practices for the policies. So rather than just list the goals, I took all the goals, and every single goal has some sort of planning background in the general plan. So there is a purpose to it. It's not just this goal there. You can look and see why it's important, why it's a planning principle, why that became one of the goals. Obviously, the goals we gathered from public feedback, from best practices, from conversation with the steering committee and with staff. I worked very closely with staff in making sure that the goals aligned with the vision of the city. And I hope that they do. So with that, what questions were there? I hope people have had an opportunity to read it. And let's just
Anybody have any questions?
have a
Do we
discussion.
have to live with 4 scenarios, or shall this town really just pick one? Because this looks like, to me, it's a
Oh.
general plan.
But anybody could say, I really want the town to go to scenario 1, and you could get into some kind of a squabble with which one are you taking?
Got it. Yeah. So those scenarios, that's a standard procedure called scenario planning, where when you go to a community, we know that there are disparate opinions, there's a whole variety of opinions. And we know that a lot of the things that people want have trade-offs. We know that people want agriculture, they want open space, they want affordable housing, they want low taxes, they want that kind of stuff. And so we can kind of envision different scenarios in which the city can grow and how that can impact the community. And so with those scenarios, what we did is we put very conceptual, as you can see, they're high level conceptual scenarios. Thanks. To show the general principles of pros and cons to each and allow people to say how much they liked them. And so what we saw when we did this one is the feedback was actually right in the middle. I think it was like when we averaged, a weighted score, it was like 2.6, kind of right in the middle, which showed that residents who took this survey understood that if you did really large lot development and you had the projected amount of people moving in, it would just take up all the land and it wouldn't bring in a lot of new amenities, it wouldn't bring in much. It would just eat up all the land with low density sprawl. And scenario 4 on the opposite end is if you went really high density, it wouldn't take up much land. You'd actually keep a lot of open space, but then you would live in a community that looks very different. You'd have like high-rise housing, which people don't really want, except that allows you to preserve complete open land. So the base assumption here is that growth is going to happen. We're going to have to accommodate people. And so what type of scenario are we going to accommodate that people? Is it going to be more sprawl? Is it going to be super compact? And the feedback was, we like somewhere in the middle. Now, these scenarios, this is not a land use map. This is not something to point to say we're doing scenario 4, scenario 1, or something like this. This was just a way to illustrate the types of principles and the type that people were considering, the pros and cons that were thought about, that sort of thing.
But which one are we picking?
Well, like I said, the feedback was right somewhere in the middle. The weighted average was
You can't be in
2.6.
the middle. You're going to flip flop back and forth, and everybody's going to, well, I want this, and next year I want that. And
Well, and again, these aren't maps.
I was hoping it was more directive, I guess. It's like our,
Yeah, the direction was that people understood, hey, we're not going to go complete sprawl. We're not going to go really high density. We want some opportunity to allow a little bit, I'll use this term higher density. Maybe it's not quite right because it's not high density, but not 2-acre farms, maybe 1/4-acre lots, or maybe a few townhomes here and there. And that's actually kind of where the plan landed. That's actually pretty consistent with that Firelight development that has a mix of housing types. It has some townhomes and apartment type stuff. It has a good amount of 1/4-acre or 1/5 acre, 1/3 acre lots. And then it does have some larger, I think, executive home style lots where they're on 1/2 acres or something like that. And that is right in the middle. It's kind of getting a hybrid of the scenarios. And so again, these scenarios aren't scenarios where a future council is going to look at it and say, oh, we're trying to do scenario 3. This was just providing some background to help a reader understand how we came to the conclusion that the general plan came to. Does that make sense?
that doesn't make no sense at all to me.
I'm sorry.
Saying that these 4 scenarios were presented in town hall when we did an open.
By 25 people.
Yeah, and so that's one of the, I just wanted, these scenarios.
Next page, Days, if you flip to that next page.
Just trying to
Oh,
figure
sorry.
out how-
Page
That's
10
not-
shows what the breakdown was of them.
I'm just trying to
Right
decide.
there at
Oh,
the top.
And this was not an academic. I mean, this is high level. This
So are
is
we
just
combining them all
discussion.
together? So we can
No.
have completely high density,
No.
or we can open it up and go like, I only see low density. So is this a guideline that I'm looking at? Is this a guideline?
This was just part of a process that we went
I
through.
do have a question on that though, was when you did the scenarios and you got your 2.6, you were using the 25 people at the open house.
Yeah.
Is that-
Right.
Did you compare that, I'm sorry, to the survey results and see that they were
Yeah.
comparative? Was there a big difference? And one of the reasons I asked that is it says that, people want to keep Tokerville the way it is now and the growth goes west. And I think that probably is, at least from the people that I've talked to, that's kind of a general consensus, not, I'm sure, everybody.
Right.
But then when I see the 25 and it's split and I'm like, well, they didn't really pick, it almost seems like there was a disparity in the 25 versus the 120 to me.
I felt like it was somewhat consistent. The challenge with the survey results is they didn't pit things against each other. And so what I mean by that is a question like, do you want to preserve open space? Well, the answer is yes. And everyone's going to say yes. And I think it was like 97% said yes, because who would say no to that? The question, that next question could be, do you want low taxes? Well, everyone's going to say yes. Now, you can see that as you start to go through the list of questions, we're going to get to a situation where everyone wants parks, everyone wants trails, everyone wants open space and to preserve agriculture, everyone wants large lot developments and low taxes and a grocery store close by. And they don't want to pay for any of this stuff. And so we could cite that survey and say, 1,000,000% of people want a grocery store that they can walk to, but no traffic that goes to that grocery store, and it's only open when they go there. And that's just not viable. And so that's where we wanted to look at what are the trade-offs? Like when we pit those things against each other, what is really important to you? So affordable housing. No one wants affordable housing until they need to go get a house, right? And like, those are some of the things we're looking at. So that's the problem with that survey. It showed us general trends. It showed us that things like trails, people like trails, and people move here because of the open space and the calm neighborhood. So as we wrote that general plan, we thought, well, how do we achieve that as much as possible within the constraints that we have? And how do we balance those things? And that's what we tried to do in creating this, because we know from those surveys that some of these things are vital and popular, but they also conflict and they're challenging to actually achieve. I don't know if that
Is dark
answers
skies,
much.
seems like dark skies is the most wanted thing in this town.
Well, the nice thing about dark skies is
Compared to
dark skies.
preserve open space, when 120 people wanted more open space than dark skies, and 25 people wanted dark skies more than open space. So it kind of got lopsided a little bit. They're not picking it apart.
That was interesting.
Lopsided.
Yeah. So when that came about, it's because those things are pitted against each other. And I think dark skies often wins out because dark skies never offends anyone. Everyone loves the sky. There's really no negative externality that comes from having a nice sky. And so when people think about what would I rather have, dark skies or affordable housing, some people are going to say, oh, I don't really want affordable housing. I'll choose the dark sky, because there's no negative there, if that makes sense. It doesn't mean that dark skies is the most important thing to everyone always. It just means that when compared to other things, dark sky is won out more commonly, but it doesn't mean it's the most important. And when you read the general plan, this is not a dark skies general plan. There's like a paragraph in there about it. So it's not like because that at that one night rose to the top through that one methodology, the general plan then shifted to be dark skies oriented. It's still just, I think, like one goal in one paragraph. But it did show that people, I think part of what makes a community feel like a quiet, small town is having that dark sky. And when people lose that, they feel like they're in the big city and they feel like they've lost that rural connection. And so it is an important thing, but it's not what drove this plan.
It's important to some and not others.
Um,
But it's just, so in generally, do you think, in your opinion, that you did an honest evaluation between the two surveys and come up with the best analogy in the middle there?
Yeah, I mean, we had to pit the wish list with reality, and which I tried to do that. We tried to do that as we discussed with staff. We know that there are projects already approved that are coming down the pipeline. We bring into this plan. We know the projections. I'd call them data, but they're projections, and those are always, going to change year by year. But we know that projections are that there's a lot of growth coming to Washington County, and that as St. George fills up, it just pushes it more and more on the periphery, and that's unfortunate. The town that this is just an anecdote. The town that I grew up in was 2,000 people in 1980. It was like 6,000 people by 1990, and then it jumped to 250,000 in just a couple decades, in 2 decades. And I grew up, I shouldn't say this, this is going to like torpedo me, but I grew up in California. And so, yeah, exactly. But Northern
sorry.
California, if that's any better, and not the Bay Area, the Central Valley, but outside of Sacramento. And I see that a lot as I look at these same principles, as I look at St. George and as I look at Salt Lake, that as the city itself grows, it just continues to grow. And these small towns on these outskirts have this onslaught of development. And that's what happened to the town I grew up in. Sacramento didn't have any more places to grow. So where did the 10% growth of the whole giant city go? Into 2 or 3 towns on the outskirts. So Tokerville, I know you're seeing that. And as St. George booms, that growth can't all stay in St. George. And so it's going south right on the border with Arizona. It's going west and it's going to come north. And so with that general plan, if we just put our heads in the sand and say no growth, we're just not going to manage it. And so the best bet is to manage it, choose now what those trade-offs are going to be and how you're going to balance it. And so I know that some people are going to look at this and say, this general plan is too pro-growth. But at the same time, this general plan realizes growth is going to happen. And if it's not managed, it's not at all, like it's going to look like what you really don't want. And so we try to balance that as much as possible.
And I believe
think
that all of
staff
us
agrees.
understand that part of it.
Yeah.
We know growth is
Yeah.
coming. We just want to have some say in how our town changes. So.
I just got one more question for him. I'm going to leave him alone. On chapter 1, on how to use this plan.
Yeah.
It says the effectiveness of the plan depends on its use. Utah State Code advises that decisions are consistent with the plan.
Right.
Consistent, what's that mean?
So
So trying to stay consistent with the zonings and the plans and where this goes and the houses and the,
yeah, so right there you can see that it advises. So
it's advised, it says advises you to be consistent.
yeah, it advises that
It's not a rule, but it's just.
exactly. So the best practice for how to use the plan would be to look at the goals and say, well, what goals do we really want to focus on right now in 2023 and 2024? What's our city budget? What are our pressing needs? So what goals do we want to focus on? And then how do we achieve those goals? This general plan, it's general, it's high level. It doesn't tell you which goals to focus on, when to focus on them, and how to focus on them. It doesn't tell you which action items to actually pursue to achieve those goals. That gives the city a lot of discretion by design. The idea here is that the best practice that's advised is to do things that are consistent. That doesn't mean you can't do other goals that aren't in this general plan or ignore goals that are in this general plan. You certainly can. So there's discretion there. That's a whole discussion that we won't open up.
That's why I brought it up. I had to have him one last dig.
Sure. But you can see right there, like if we say, you have to do these goals, then all of a sudden, well, if you're pursuing goals that aren't in the plan, or you decide dark skies is not important to you, and so you're not going to pursue that. If it's a mandatory plan, that gets more difficult.
Well, and that's
But
why we're talking about zone issues, not necessarily
Not
the
the
whole
goals.
plan, right?
Right.
it's-
Right. You'd be really strapped if you made the whole
Yeah,
thing
that would
mandatory.
be a
Oh,
bad idea
yeah.
for sure.
As you looked at this, I mean, were there things that stood out? Were there any individual goals that you found concerning or
we'll get
missing?
into that. We do have to have a public hearing on this, so I'd kind of like to hear
Sure.
what the public might have to say, and then we'll get into discussion and things like that, if that's okay. Okay, so I should have asked, does anybody else have more questions? Because I did kind of cut that off. Hopefully we're good. Okay, so we will now have a public hearing on business item F2, discussion or public hearing. Public input is sought on Tokerville City General Plan. The public hearing is now open.
I'm Manning Butterworth, live on 1643 South Rimview Drive. First of all, I want to say there's a lot, in my opinion, to like about this general plan. I do have some comments. On section 2, page 7, it says many, I'm quoting now, many of these public references are in opposition to one another, but there's only one example given. And I have a question about that. It says, the example is that large lot development maintains a similar look and feel of the community, but it requires the most amount of land, which results in a greater loss of open space and agricultural land. That's only true if the underlying premise is that the total population remain the same throughout all of these, different possibilities. And later on, that actually is stated explicitly, but it's not stated there, and I don't know what the basis for assuming that. I would think that'd be a question that, the planning commission and the council would have something to say about. In the scenario planning section, it states that, again, I'm quoting, each scenario was designed to conceptually visualize the impact of using different land use policies to accommodate equivalent population growth. And so it's kind of a follow-on to the first comment. Why is it a requirement that the population growth be equivalent in all of these scenarios? There's no reason given for that I saw. And scenario one, for example, says larger lots and single-family homes leads to increased service costs per unit for municipal and other services. Why is that? I would think actually if you have larger lots with fewer homes, I would think the cost could be less. So there's no explanation or justification for that statement, but it is made in the general plan. In chapter 3, land use development, again, I'm quoting, while newly approved zones should generally be consistent with and inserting here, the land use maps, overall geographical and land use themes. The map is not intended to be a parcel by parcel description of land use locations nor prescribe specific zones. It gets back to the conversation that you were having just shortly before, because that seems to me, from my recollection, perhaps not consistent with the council's direction at the last meeting. The direction seemed to be to go toward greater specificity, and that's kind of what I was hearing from the planning commission as well. By the way, that ordinance 1071, I think it would do a lot of good that the yellow highlighted, just delete that whole yellow highlighted sentence. And it gets rid of the general, my suggestion. Transportation, why are cul-de-sacs discouraged? I don't live in a cul-de-sac now, but I have lived in a cul-de-sac, and I thought that that was wonderful. I think that I would think that homeowners would consider that desirable, but in the general plan, that's discouraged. They want through streets, a grid. Can I have just a couple more minutes? It's not very busy here.
Actually,
Can you say the page numbers, or at least, or give us the page numbers when you're doing that? That's up to the.
Yeah.
that's up to the Chairman, if you can have.
Yeah, I'll just give you a copy of this.
I'll give you, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Economic Development Unit, in that section, address tourism accommodations. The city should continue to monitor the number of permitted short-term rentals and the number of listings on publicly available websites such as Airbnb and VRBO. Are we allowed to do that? Is the city allowed to do that? I thought the state prohibited that.
Prohibited what?
I'll read it again.
Okay.
This is from the general plan. I'm quoting. The city should continue to monitor the number of permitted short-term rentals and the number of listings on publicly available websites
Yeah, you can't
such
do
as Airbnb and VRBO. I thought we were prohibited from doing that.
Well,
You can monitor.
you can monitor it, but you can't use it as evidence for enforcement. It's inadmissible.
Okay.
It doesn't prove more or less that they're actually renting it just because they're listing it on a site. That's the point.
Okay. Last one. Under Economic Development Unit, another option to explore is coordinating with local organizations to host public star parties. This action works, I'm quoting now, this action works in conjunction with the city's nighttime lighting ordinance. Periodic public star parties raise awareness and appreciation for the importance of protecting the night sky. Coordinate with community houses to create star parties. Great idea. It's an economic draw. I don't know how much you monitor this kind of activity, but astrotourism, that's what it's called, because basically half of the country is gone as far as being able to see the night sky. That is becoming a thing, astrotourism, $1 billion thing. So yes, I think that's a tremendously great idea. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, I will take a motion to close the public hearing.
I make a motion that we close the public hearing on business item F2, the city's general plan.
We got a motion and a second. Take a vote.
Aye.
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 Aye. I do have one question, discussing the 3 or 4 scenarios again. I'm just kind of curious with the growth that we have, and we've got Firelight coming in, and we've got the underlying zoning is R120, so it's half acre lots. However, we do allow for a bonus density, which opens up open space, that kind of a thing, of 30%. What scenario would that fall into? Where you're
What component? Doing the density bonus or just that?
so underlying
amount
is
of-
a larger lot with density bonus. They've got townhomes, they've got things like that going in there. So I'm just kind of curious where to put that in my mind as far as the scenario that we're going with there.
Yeah, I would think that would be kind of just somewhere in the middle. It's not that a zone size is a scenario. It's the whole layout of the city would be a scenario. So if you're allowing a mix of townhomes and then larger lot development, that's somewhere in the middle, right? That scenario 4 would be, we're going to do apartments, townhomes, high rises, that side. Scenario 1 would be, we're not allowing any townhomes, we're not allowing any, we're just doing 1 acre lots.
Yeah.
So somewhere in the middle would be that mix.
Anybody have anything you want to bring up? Go ahead and discuss it.
I think you got to pick your scenario, guys.
Yeah.
Without picking your scenario, the scenarios are in there. So everybody's looking at the scenarios and which one do you pick? Which one do you enforce? Or do you even just ignore it? Or I can't wrap my head around the scenario thing here. You got one way you want to grow and one thing you want to do, and that's your future, your vision. You can't have 4
one of the
different
reasons
visions.
I asked that question is because the growth in Tokerville is going to be, in my opinion, and I'm pretty sure it's fairly accurate, is going to be that MPDO scenario. So it kind of seems like, okay, we are wanting Tokerville to stay the same where we live, and the new growth to follow that kind of a Firelight, MPDO, bonus density, that kind of thing. So it almost seems like we already have a direction that's kind of dictated to us, not that we get to choose one or not, so maybe, and then, I'm certainly open to other ideas, but it does seem like we could say that's the scenario we want to say in our general plan, and highlight that as this is kind of how we want it to go, and maybe have some other things, but not be like, oh man, I don't even know what direction we're going here. So that's kind of down the same thing as you're saying. Is there? It does feel like I know it's a general plan, but there needs to be a plan, and the plan is kind of dictated by what's happening. So I don't know.
So I think I understand what you're saying is the general plan states 4 different scenarios, but we're really kind of committed already
So-
to.
I think that those scenarios are there to give context to the development of the plan.
Okay.
It is not to represent the direction of the
Okay.
plan.
Well, if they're for the development of the plan, are you going to use all 4 scenarios to develop the plan?
Dan, you want to?
Yes. Yeah, I just.
Are you on the general plan or are you on my slides? So maybe go to the slide before, and if not, it's the slide after.
Are we going to have all 4 scenarios?
Okay, so scenario planning. How do we maintain the character? So this is the bottom right. Yeah, bottom right. So it says 4 conceptual scenarios were created to guide. Let's just read through this. Were created to guide the conversation on how to balance the competing interests. Each scenario was designed to conceptually visualize the impact of using different land use policies to accommodate equivalent population growth. These scenarios were reviewed and discussed by the stakeholder committee and the public at the open house. Each map is a conceptual visualization intended to demonstrate the themes, not identify which properties would be included. So these were the scenarios that were used to help receive feedback from the community to inform the decision-making process that we went through in creating the general plan. So if you go to the next slide, it then talks about the data from the rest of the open house. So this is under the community context chapter. This is just context about Tokerville and about the public engagement process we went through, the type of feedback we received from the community, and how we created a vision. Those next couple those next couple of paragraphs right there, the creating a vision, that outlines more about what that means. I don't know, we need to necessarily read through it, but you can see that the scenario planning, well, right there, scenario planning indicated a slight general support for scenario 3. Again, it was like 2.6. Yeah, there it is. Scenario preference. 2.6 was scenario 3. So what it was is that received the highest average score was scenario 3, actually. So you can see that there's a plurality, right? These are scores out of 5. And none of them really was above and beyond the others, a slight preference for scenario 3. Basically, what that showed us is there's a lot of different opinions in the community. I mean, that's probably the best feedback, with a slight preference for those ones in the middle, maybe. That's all.
Yeah,
And this is, again, a small subset at one open house.
that's where I would
like-
love to see a bigger subset of that. So we
And
have a-
like Riker said, this is just saying how we went through the process. And like you've mentioned before, we already know that Firelight's developed. I mean, we could go out and do a statistically valid survey and get certain data. That doesn't change approvals for things that are already approved and recorded. So.
All right. Okay, page 9. Yeah, you might want to stay up there. I'll just keep talking about these things. Page 9, and I have a seat. You take a microphone down there.
Page 9.
Page 9, TDR option. TDR option to me is something that's going to be handled through our development that's coming up. Meaning it largely is going to be MPDOs, I'm sure of. And it offers bonus densities and all of that. When we open up a TDR program, we're now saying, and I'm sure there's ways we're saying now that you can higher density in downtown Tokerville on 5-acre lots, that kind of thing.
Right.
To me, I don't feel like we need that in our city. I believe we've already got options to create higher density and maintain that open space. And I understand you're trying to maintain the whole agriculture areas and all of that.
So again, with these 4 scenarios, this is not laying out any
No,
policy
I'm
right
actually,
here.
I'm speaking specifically on a goal on.
Oh, on one of the goals. Okay, so not right
and
here.
It may not be on page 9.
So, okay, so I believe that goal says explore the potential. It's something really loosey
And so
goosey.
if we
It's
don't
not
have
saying
it
to
in
do
there,
it.
if we don't have it in there, we can still explore it. But having it in there kind of says, hey, yeah, look at this, what we can do. And if we're looking at making our general plan a more regulatory thing, to me, that's kind of like, could cause some conflict in how people are thinking about what to do.
Just go back a page. It's under the land use goals. It's going to be the last page in the green
Top of page
section.
16 of the general plan.
Yeah, right.
I don't know why I said 9.
Okay,
Nine's
but
not where I
go
was.
to the next page, actually.
You're right, 16.
right
is
there.
right.
And then it's probably, well, Explore brought it up right there. Explore a TDR or PDR program to protect strategic farms and open space.
I would be fine with that not being in there because I think we can already do that. But it also, like I said, if we're going to go a direction that way, then that would be one of my recommendations to take TDR out. Page, let's go to page. Nope, I don't want to do that. We've already talked about it. Page 13. Again, these are going to be some of those. I wrote this in the
Are you referring to page 13 of the,
of the general plan.
of the okay.
And I
Because-
wrote these things with the idea that we were wanting our general plan to be a little bit more regulatory. So some of these things may or may not. Page 13. Hopefully I can get to what I'm trying to say here. I put remove while newly approved zones should be generally consistent with the map's overall geographic and land use themes. Replace with something like any approval of zone change must follow general plan amendment. So again, that's going to be something that we deal with later, possibly. So page 19, goal 1. A1, which has to do with the TDR again.
Yeah.
I don't think that needs to be in our goal 2, A1. Goal 2, A1, establish single-family neighborhoods, limit housing types of lot sizes to match neighborhood. What did I put down for that? 19, goal 2, or goal 1, A1. Goal 2, A2. I said the wrong one. Goal 2, A2, implement caps on short-term rentals in existing traditional neighborhoods. We already do that.
Already doing, exactly.
I don't know that it says implement. I would say enforce, right? Because we've already implemented that. That's something that we've already got. So instead of implement, I'd say switch that to enforce. Let's see, same page. We're looking at B2. B2, use flexible zoning tools to allow for a mix of housing types. Again, I'm looking at the idea of if we maintain this as more of a regulatory thing, having that in there. We already have that in code. That's already something we're already doing. I don't know that we need to add any more in there that says that we need to do this still or more or whatever. So just a thought.
And if
Some of those are the state code. that we specify.
Some of those are state code, yes. And another component is sometimes in the general plan lays out your vision and your goals. They're not all going to be new things. A lot of times they're things you're already doing.
Yeah.
And one important consideration is that planning commissions, but also city council members change. And so to put something in the general plan that you're doing now, you may think our current city council is doing this, or a current mayor supports this, or city manager supports this. And then you have staff change and council members change and all that. Well, now it's in the general plan that says, by the way, we need to be doing this. And so when they go to remove it, they say, well, right here in the general plan, it says.
On that right there, use flexible zoning tools. If the scenarios are to maintain Tokerville as what Tokerville is now and let all the growth go out there, I would think that we could say, use flexible zoning tools within an NPDO to allow these kind of things. So that's, it protects downtown. We're not trying to use flexible zoning tools here to change it, because that's what most people wanted, is to maintain the footprint in the small town. But let's add it to NPDOs. That's my take on that one.
Yeah.
C1, include housing types that are more affordable, such as smaller lot sizes, multifamily units. And I'm kind of going off of our ordinances already allowing for that, but I don't need to really go off of that one. C2, it's not say, let's see, enhanced standards for HOA. We don't, that's not even in our, city doesn't do that, right? We don't have control of HOA. Am I wrong about that? So to
not
me, it
for
seems
the
like,
HOA, but it's for the common space that an HOA regulates. So your standards would be for what amenities need to be included, or what should be included in that development agreement or annexation policy plan. So it'd be your standards for your common space that an HOA maintains through
okay, so how,
maintenance
How
agreement.
would you reword that?
well, and the other thing is how would we enhance the standards? I'm not
in
sure.
your city code. So your city code would say this townhome development's coming in and has 20% open space. So of that 20% open space, X percent needs to be landscaped. Here's your landscaping standards, landscaping code that Riker would be working on. You need to have 3 out of 10 amenities. That would be your little HOA park or your pickleball court.
Density bonuses.
We have, and so-
but
Mhm.
yeah.
Density bonuses is a great example of it.
He's just suggesting that if you can put some standards for common areas, so that any development, if they're going to have a neighborhood park or something like that, or something that there needs to be
It's just
some
kind of
benefit.
going along with what we did like for RV parks. standards, right? We said, oh, you've got to have this.
Yeah, and that's why when I heard it, and I agree, I was kind of like, well, we already do that, and we have any, we can't control an HOA, and I guess maybe we can through ordinance. But
It allows, if it's kept in the general plan here, it allows that if it's missed in an ordinance, we can refer to the general
Okay.
plan and say, you know what, yeah, we get it. We didn't put that in the RV ordinance, but you know what, in our general plan, it does say you have to meet these standards.
okay,
And so it's kind of a backstop for if we miss something in an ordinance.
okay. D3, encourage placement of hotels next to services that support tourists, such as restaurants and shops, by creating zones with similar allowed uses. This is underneath, apply a comprehensive planning approach to new neighborhoods. That's a neighborhood, is not a commercial area, and that's currently where we have all of our hotels, and that is our commercial areas. So I don't know that that's a goal that we should have to encourage placement of hotels in new neighborhoods. So
Yeah, it depends on how you define a neighborhood, I guess. I was thinking your whole neighborhood, which definitely includes the commercial component. Certainly the new neighborhood, like Firelight, like that whole area is what I'm thinking of. But
and those are in commercial areas, and so maybe a definition of neighborhoods or whatever it is. But to me,
Yeah.
neighborhood sounds like we're going to try to put a hotel next to a neighborhood, right? Or a home.
Well, but they are next to neighborhoods.
Well, they are.
I
They
think
are.
even just simply changing the word neighborhoods for new development.
New
Yes.
growth area. Yeah.
New development.
I think that yeah.
Yeah, it's a new growth
Actually,
maybe. maybe.
Yeah, new growth area or new
Yeah.
development area.
Well, it also has to be pertaining to commercial, because we're talking about hotels and
Yeah.
commercial. So, okay.
Yeah, but if it's just a regular residential, it's saying similar areas, so you're not gonna put that right next to,
Yeah, I
And it
don't
talks
know. I
about
just kind of.
churches and
right?
schools, which will
That's
be
that's
divided into-
two, and that makes sense to me to call that in a neighborhood. But the three does not make sense to call hotels in neighborhoods to me. Okay, so then let's go to page 30. So I understand the component, and we have to have it, and I've read the three ones that we
income.
chose, and I get all of that kind of stuff. Page 30, goal 1B2, assist qualified individuals to receive weatherization assistance. Assist kind of means to me like we have to actually take them and say, oh, let me help you do this, right? As opposed to what I would say encourage, and also change receive to seek. So it says B2, assist qualifying individuals to receive, assist to receive. It seems to me like it ought to say, let's see, B2. Oh, encourage and to receive.
So wait, receive is okay, but assist to encourage.
No, I said receive should be seek. So instead of
seek.
oh my gosh, I gotta read my notes.
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Instead
no, that
of
makes sense.
Assist, make it encourage, and instead of receive, make it seek.
Now, encourage to me speaks more of like you're going to be, I don't know, going out
Trying
the
to sell them
community,
on it.
trying, yeah,
Well,
exactly.
and assist makes it sound like I'm going to actually walk them through that process of doing it, and I don't know that that's where Tokerville wants to be. I think we would rather say, hey, here's a program.
That's assisting.
It's
Just making
encouraging-
aware.
It's encouraging, so we could keep assist to me,
Yeah.
but it
seek makes more sense.
just
Yeah.
when I read it, it was kind of like, I don't know if we need to be grabbing everybody and saying, hey, let's do this kind of thing, or
I think assist just means here's these programs, and
Yeah. Here's the link.
yeah,
That's
this
what
is
I'm
just me
thinking.
going
I
through
don't-
and seeing words that I was like, I'm not sure, right? So
And I think maybe going along with that, we should remove the word qualifying. We don't know if they qualify, right off the bat.
yeah,
It says encourage
exactly,
individuals,
Especially with seek. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. If it were receiving, they'd have to be qualifying,
Yeah,
but if
because
it's just
if we're gonna
seeking,
complete that goal, right, and if it says encourage, it just says encourage encourage individuals to seek, weatherization assistance from Five County. Maybe something like that, because that could just be, put it on our website.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
And assisting means that I'm helping them fill out forms and things like that. And
I
I
like
don't know,
that.
that's,
I'll just put assist or encourage. Just an or.
Or encourage.
Do whatever
I know
works
this
best
is
for you guys.
very.
Assist
and
or encourage individuals to
nitpicky,
seek.
but that's what I'm looking at here.
Yeah.
Okay, so, let's see,
Are you still on 5?
I think that page,
Mhm.
I'm sorry?
Yes.
Okay, on page 30, again, in goals, I think that we could, something that I really like, and I think that it kind of falls in the same realm as what we're looking at here, and that would be to add work to develop areas to accommodate self-help home building lots.
Okay, sorry. So
Oh,
where?
I'm sorry, I didn't know you were still in the middle of.
No, I'm trying.
No, I
to-
don't have this. I'm saying add it to this.
Oh, add it on under which one?
Underneath, 2A, yes.
2A, assist affordability through conscientious land use policies.
Yeah, and so mine is, and I think, so we have a self-built or self-help
Self-help.
home thing in town. From everybody I've talked to, they love it. The
Mhm.
people are, they do a great job building their homes, maintaining their homes. It makes a lot of sense to me to have that as a goal in our town. So the goal I wrote was work to develop areas to accommodate self-help home building lots. And another one that I liked, and I actually took this out of, I shouldn't say it, but Washington City's general plan. It says work with community housing development organizations to develop high quality housing options for moderate income households. Anyways, I don't know.
How do you work to encourage that? The one
Work with
before?
community housing development organizations. So we're trying to figure out, we can go to an organization and say, hey, this is the kind of housing, which would be very much like the self-help home, and go to that organization and say, how do we get this in Pflugerville? Or how do we help you get it here, that kind of thing. And so just, again, it's a goals thing and it's, yeah. Okay. Let's see, goal. Well, maybe don't have my page here. Goal two, B3.
B2.
B3, goal 2, B3, review internal ADU standards and align city ordinance with state code. Can you explain that just a little bit?
Yeah, so the state came out with internal accessory, well, they came out with accessory dwelling unit standards under state statute, and they apply only to internal ADUs. So a city has really broad discretion on what to allow and if to allow external, so detached accessory dwelling units. But if it's inside the house, they now need to follow state code. And they keep changing those regulations. So I don't know where you're at on aligning it with the current state code, but even if you've aligned it with current state code, in the next 5 years, you're gonna have to realign it. So we just threw it in the general plan.
Are we currently doing this now?
So we're working on it, but the key here is that eventually we're going to have to report on those to the state.
So state requirement is that we're going to have to report on them and okay, so okay, that's fine.
What do you think about the B2? How are we going to provide a mix?
Provide a mix of housing types and price points
You
to
can't-
meet
you
the
can't
needs of each
dictate.
buyer and renter.
You can't dictate that to anybody.
We can't.
It's a goal, and then Firelight provides a mix of housing types. I mean, you have the townhome, you have the smaller footprint detached home on smaller lots, you have the larger one. I mean, there's a mix.
Yeah.
You don't dictate the price, but you dictate
The approval of the buildings.
the approval of the buildings, the type of buildings, and the
Zoning.
market dictates the price. But
We're looking for price points, yeah. I suppose lower price points to meet each buyers and renters in each income bracket.
yeah,
So that
So
means
is
that we're
Firelight gonna
allowing.
offer them kind of things, or that's just kind of a wish thing there?
I mean, you can create the lower price point, and then the market determines what a low price point is.
Yeah.
Which frankly is too high.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's always like.
The policy is way high. It's all right.
Okay.
Easy.
Goal 2B4. review ways to memorialize and establishment and keep a log of approved ADUs. So if that's what we're gonna have to do in the state, then that's where we're at. I didn't know that we had to do that, or the state, we did talk about that. I didn't know if that was a law or what. Okay, so, page 41. I'd love to see a trails map created, and I'd love to see it in the general plan so people can look at it, or anywhere. Maybe we could do it somewhere else, but as far as I'm aware, we don't have a city. We have a map that I could pull up and look at all the trails in town. And, okay,
Yeah, it's got each of the trails called out, and then it has overviews of it. It's in our capital.
okay, so,
But I don't know if we have, some of these, that's our future plan.
Some of the new ones aren't in there yet, but
Yeah.
yeah.
We can-
just a thought, I know, I've never seen that map, so I'm like, hey, where are all these trails we're talking? I don't
Yeah,
know,
they're
so,
individual in the capital.
okay.
So.
Page 41, page 53. And now I see this map here, and it's land use zoning analysis, present and future conditions. It really, to me, it wasn't representing anything
it doesn't
current.
add
I mean, we do
much.
have some of that stuff, but
Right. You can just pull that
I was
down.
like, this, I don't know what the purpose of that is as much to just say, hey, this is where we have it kind of now, but we also have
Yeah.
more in there. So it wasn't a very,
It's not that
it's
helpful.
not a map that shows me where our current commercial areas that we're looking to have, or, along the bypass and things like that. So I was like, maybe we need to
I could just
add
cut
a
it
little bit more to that map to show.
or just pull it. I don't think it adds much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and it kind of goes down to this, if it's a regulatory thing, and here's the areas in the future planning map and that kind of thing. And so that's kind of where I was going with that in my mind. Okay, 54, goal 1B2. 55. Did I say the wrong ones?
Yeah, 55.
54. B2. So page 54.
We're on 55.
Yeah. This one's 55.
Oh, I have an old copy. Okay, so whatever page that is, which I guess is 55, and I'm looking at goal B2. Make sure that's the
Goal
same.
1,
Goal 1 B2.
B2. Include common space amenities such as art gathering.
Okay, yeah, that's the right one. To me, when I'm looking at that, I'd say include art gathering spaces and things like that. It doesn't, that I know that some people enjoy that, but to me, it could be a little bit broader in saying, in fact, removing that and just saying something like identify commercial businesses that provide goods and services that to support the needs of the local residents, or something along those lines. Because I came from Vegas. And
Well, Vegas has a lot of common space.
They have a lot of that, and they have a lot of art pieces that I know they've spent a lot of money on, and things like that I feel like don't fit in Tokerville, right? And so when I read that, I'm envisioning this kind of a setup. Tokerville's not there yet.
Sure.
So to
Why
me,
would you eliminate that though?
well, maybe not. So my point is to look at commercial spaces that accommodate what the people want, not art and zone. And now maybe it's another one, maybe not to remove it or whatever. But
I think that where it says such as, I think that keeps it general because common space amenities is really, really vague. And those are just a few examples, but I mean, it could be a sidewalk or a public restroom where there are multiple, like, I don't think we should ever get rid of art either.
no, I don't either.
I
And
think it's a good
that's why
suggestion, even if it's just.
That's why, to me, it seems like I kind of like the idea of adding spaces that accommodate what the people here want now, and not that they don't want art. And that's why I kind of try to say because art's cool. But we have no commercial in Tokerville at all right now, so it'd be kind of cool to figure out some things that the people want. maybe it goes in there. Okay, page 50. Let's see, I don't even know where I'm at now, so. Goal 2, promote tourism, economic development throughout recreational, retail, and accommodations. Page
Goal
55,
two, further
2.
down, promote
Yeah.
tourism, okay.
I think we can accommodate tourism, and we do through our hotels, and we do it through our RV resorts and things like that. Promote and that flies in the face of the highest number, it wasn't 98, but one of the highest survey results is that we don't want tourism. We don't want to encourage it, that kind of a thing. So to me, that goal almost seemed like it was not in line with what our survey results were.
That was pretty high. We didn't want Tocqueville to be a tourist destination.
Right. So
Right.
to promote it, I don't know that that's necessarily where we want to go with it. We know it's going to be here, and we know we have some properties to accommodate that, but promoting, it doesn't really fit with our survey result.
What if we just crossed off the word tourism, promote economic development?
Sounds good. That makes a lot more sense to me than
Get rid of
promote
goal
tourism.
2 entirely, but
Economic development was also low, but we need it. So,
You have to have it for lower
yeah,
taxes.
you've got to have it.
Tax money, yeah.
Absolutely. And I don't think the tourism side of it is what I think. And that is all that I have to say. And I know that was a lot. So. Anybody else have anything else to say?
you stole my last one before I got to it. I don't want to promote tourism, and I don't want to be a tourist destination.
Right.
I just strike that goal 2 right out of there, A and B.
So just a thought, because I know that we had a public hearing and we have to make a recommendation or we have to make a motion. We do have a long ways to go in mapping if we end up going with, with what our recommendation is to make it more regulatory. I don't know if recommending approval without the mapping and all of that stuff in there would be, if we're at that point right now.
Well, it says possible recommendation.
Yeah, I'm saying, so either the motion's going to be, whatever it is, table with.
Are we going to make changes in this, or?
And that's kind of why I wanted to go through what I said tonight, and maybe there's some things we can look at there and maybe change, but I mean, if we're going to make a recommendation tonight, or, for approval, then, I don't know that we should.
You can make it conditional.
Yeah, but
I'm presenting a red line version to council.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things to work through there, and so that's what I would say about it.
It'd be nice to do that, send it up to them and let them look at it and pick a few things and then send it back and then be done with it. I don't know. It's
I
better
don't want
to have
drag
more
it out.
eyes on the goal than just us.
I don't want to drag it out with all this, so we'd
Yes.
kind of like to see a red line of some of the suggestions the things that you were suggesting, because I'm not sure that I really agree with.
No, and I'm
With
fine
some
with
of
that.
them.
That's what we.
I kind of look at it, go, as you're going through, I was like, this actually looks
Right.
pretty
This
good
is a
already.
discussion, and
So how do we do that?
So to me, it would be that we would look to table it and then look at a red line of things coming in. And also to get the review or the results back from city council telling, what direction we go. And then we can really work on it and make it go the direction that is chosen. Right?
Yeah.
So to me,
That sounds
I'm
right.
open to discussion on those things that I talked about, don't necessarily need to be changed, right? So that's why.
Well, I liked a lot of them. I mean, just some of the wording was just a little bit different. It was,
So if we
I guess,
if we were to table and red line and then get
it
it
was
back.
just
and see-
general.
And then we really need to wait to see what
Yeah.
council's direction is gonna be there, right?
They might want some different things or something too. And
Well, it wouldn't be sending this up to them until we get something back and then we look
Yeah.
at it and then we send it to them as as an approval, or we can do approval now, but there's a lot of stuff in there that needs to be worked on
yeah, it needs to be redlined up, I think.
if we go a direction that we recommended. Okay,
So you are looking for a motion?
Yep.
I make a motion that we table it so that the items that were covered can be redlined, and also so we can get some feedback from city council on how they want to proceed with the ordinance.
Yeah, whether the plan is advisory or regulatory.
Yes.
it's gonna make a big difference in how that plan comes out. So,
That make
Okay.
sense?
I have a motion.
A second?
Motion and second, take a vote.
Aye.
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 Okay. Takes us to business item F3. Discussion on ordinance 2023 planned commercial zone to establish an allowed use table for permitted uses and to clarify the application requirements. Riker.
Yeah, so going along with the comments in the direction that was given at the previous planning commission meeting, I went through, and in your packets, you should have two different versions of this ordinance. One removes those uses that were discussed in the previous meeting, and the other one adds references to state code where additional distancing requirements are outlined. Just for your information, those distance requirements for establishments that sell alcohol for outlets, it's 600 feet from the patron entrance to a community location, and in state code, a community location includes a school, to that community location property boundary, or 200 feet in a straight line from the patron entrance to the community location property boundary. For tobacco shops, which would include a vape shop, there's a few more distance requirements. That's 1,000 feet. It cannot be within 1,000 feet of the property boundary of a community location. Cannot be within 600 feet of another retail tobacco specialty business, and cannot be within 600 feet of a property zoned for agricultural or residential use. And there should be references with each of those, and they're listed as conditional uses with standards to follow, and those standards are in state code.
Any questions for Riker, staff, anybody?
It's been a while since we've seen this one.
June.
What did we take out of it?
Well, we had talked about looking at taverns and things like that, pulling that off of the use, of the allowed use table.
More so, we're dealing with the biggest reason behind this ordinance is to add to this zoning district the requirements on what needs to be submitted and documented in anticipation of a zone change. And we just didn't have that in our prior.
And I think in our last meeting, we had gone through and basically said, yeah, this is what we like. But then we got to that use table and then we started saying, hey, staff, would you look at the use table and maybe, and he's offered 3 different copies of that to, remove and then also to keep it in there with conditional use type stuff or that kind of thing.
On the allowed use table, didn't we discard some of these items?
Riker.
So that's why there's 2 versions of this provided. There's one that has those uses still in the ordinance, but references to state code on those distance requirements. And then you should have another copy of the ordinance that has those removed. In the previous planning commission meeting, the direction that was given was to provide both of those.
So there's 3 versions in here, right?
Including the original version, yes.
Where's the final last version? Right down here.
It's
Well, there's not really a final last. He's given 2 options on the last version. which is one, just, would you quickly explain what the difference between the two are?
So the differences here are in the version that removes some uses, it removes the use of a liquor store and of a tattoo parlor and of a tavern. Those were the uses identified in that previous meeting. In the other version, it lists specific references to state code for the tavern, the liquor store, and it also includes the use of a vape shop, as was discussed in the previous meeting, with references to state code on those distance requirements and standards as well.
Down how many feet apart.
Yeah.
And those are state codes. That, there is a possibility for us to, through ordinance, make it tighter than state code, right? For example, I looked at, and this is really for after public hearing, I guess, but well, maybe not. Washington City again, they used a population for permits. I think it was something like 10,200 people for one permit or something along those lines. So state code says how far away and all of that, but we could go a little deeper and saying, this is how many people have to be here, or regulate it some way like that as well through code. And we don't have that currently, so we'd have to add it in there. Any other thoughts or ideas, things we need to discuss on that?
No.
Okay, then we'll open this up for public hearing. Public hearing, public input is sought on ordinance 2023 planned commercial zone to establish an allowed use table for permitted uses and to clarify the application requirements. Public hearing is open.
Hi, Chris Butterworth, 1643 South Rimview. And I'm sorry, could you clarify with the three? I thought we were saying there wasn't liquor stores, taverns, vape shops, and then I'm hearing, yes, we are.
So in our original ordinance that came through us, it did have that. In our last meeting, we discussed either getting rid of them or adding them with CS, conditional with.
Conditional with standards.
What is that
Standards.
conditional? What is the conditional standard?
State code.
Which is what?
Well, you have to go to you have to go to state code for each one of those to see what they say.
State code talks about distances away and all those kind of things. And
So
that's
you're,
why I
so we're
Community
talking about
applications.
approving these, even within an area of small as Tokerville? We're asking for liquor shops and.
They're just considering it. They're just considering, do you want to do these uses? Do you want to take some of these uses out of there? Or do you want to consider having some of these uses that they have to follow state code?
I mean, yeah,
The state code says. for-
I remember before when I was here, I'd asked that, they'd not be
Yeah, so
adopted.
They wanted to see it both ways.
Yeah.
So right,
Okay.
both ways, either removing them completely or keeping it in, but seeing what state code said.
Okay, I would suggest removing them, because I think if you put them in there and then you're gonna rearrange your codes all you want, but it's still gonna be there. And that's still a temptation to our young folks that I would like not to have to see them have to go through a lot of drug counseling and, is that,
I like that.
so you're saying it would still be in
All
there?
three of those.
Well,
We-
we'll,
we-
this is public hearing. We'll
We're trying
let
to
you.
decide.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
we'll get to that after the public hearing.
Yeah, my hope would be we would let that go, or take those back out
Yeah, so we wanted to-
for safety. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our young people don't need that temptation. I think. What citizens do we want in the future, We want people that do.
Diane Sands, 409 Zion Trail. I had a question. Did you or did you not say at one of the meetings that if we specifically took out businesses that would be discrimination and that could set us up for lawsuits?
No, we have to be careful that any law that we adopt or ordinance that we adopt applies to everyone equally.
Okay.
We can prohibit certain types of businesses. There are some state codes that have some limitations on certain types, but
I know it's still the public hearing, but just one thing, Victoria from Snow Jensen and Reese, she actually spoke about that at the Utah Business License Conference that I went to with Ruth last year. Well, it was in early spring. But with that, she said, what happens is you actually have to end up like say it was like a sexually oriented business, right? And you don't want that to show that what they actually have to do, because obviously their movie theaters or things that what they're seeing a lot of cities do is cite secondary effects. So you're not discriminating against that type of business. It's that you're addressing like public health, safety, and welfare, and what the secondary effects are from having those types of businesses.
Correct.
So
And
we spoke about that. I actually called Attorney Snow after that conference, and we spoke about secondary effects and how that, with regards to this. So, yeah.
right.
Not necessarily
And
discrimination, just secondary effects.
right. And I'm not in favor of those things, but I don't want to see us set ourselves up for more lawsuits, number one. And I think I remember you saying that if we did take them off, that you wanted the planning commission to come with reasons for those secondary, and that they would have to justify that in order to take them off of the list.
Yeah, we didn't say that we have to, but we said that we would like to see that. I mean, we would definitely
Yeah,
like to
so
see that
before
for
you
sure.
decide to take them off, I would suggest you do that so we don't have more
Well, and
lawsuits.
I don't know that we're held to that because was this in our planned commercial before?
The
Planned
so
commercial.
the liquor store and taverns were, and as
Were.
well as the tattoo parlor, the vape shops were not.
I don't know that we have to, I mean, we're making a code, we can leave a lot of things off. And it doesn't necessarily even have to be that. It could be a dog shelter or whatever kind of thing. And we could just say we don't want that, right?
Correct.
But I understand citing the reasons why as well, but I don't know. I don't know how to,
And population was a good one for that.
Okay.
yeah.
I just don't want us to like do something and then have more lawsuits.
Well, and that's.
Agreed. I do, me
So-
neither.
With that exact same idea, that's why I went and looked at Washington cities to see what they do, because I know they have that. And then they had these ideas about having population control and things like that. So we're not in there. We don't need it.
Perfect.
That might be
Thanks.
we don't have that population.
Manning Butterworth, 1643 South Ramview Drive again. I really appreciated the comments by Commissioner Olson about if there is a zone change or an application for, that the public have an opportunity for input. I was very concerned, and maybe I misunderstood, but last time it seemed like that decision could be made at the staff level and go directly to council as a recommendation. I'm not sure that's what the planning commission is recommending, but I would be very concerned if that were the case. I think the public does need to have an opportunity for input whenever there's a zone change request or an application for that. Thank you.
Yep.
No.
Yeah, you are. You're public.
Yeah, but I
Yeah.
think we're fine with come on up.
Just a member of the public.
Gary Chaves, 226 Mountain Charm in Tocqueville. I was just, some of the things I was going in my head, why do I leave Tocqueville? And, and we've got seniors coming in as well in the new development area. So I thought, okay, groceries, pharmacies, hair salons, gas stations, auto repair, Walgreens, dentist, urgent care, fitness. Those are some reasons people leave this town. And I'm wondering, I didn't see all of those items on there. So what happens if it's not on the list?
It's allowed to
So
use only the following uses set forth in the table below are allowed in a planned commercial districts. So that's
And then at the bottom.
At the
The one at
bottom.
the bottom is a
yes.
catch-all.
Other uses similar to above and adjudged to be in harmony with the character intent of the zoning district.
Because like a
great
dentist and an
catch-all.
urgent care and a pharmacy, I think are kind of important
Yeah.
with the seniors coming in. So you might want to consider adding some of those things or just letting it go to default.
Right.
That's all I have to say.
And really, I think, man, there's so many different uses that we could be, we could use that. I don't know that we could name them all in a use table.
But
That's
just
why
the
the
common-
catch-all
Just
phrase
the
down there.
common ones, I think, would
Yeah.
be,
Yeah.
something you might want to add. Thank you.
It does fall in the catch-all of other
Yeah,
uses
and I
similar
don't-
above and judge, but
Only the following uses.
I wouldn't mind adding a few to that. That's a good point.
Yeah, I agree. It's just how many do you add and where do
Yeah,
you
it's just
stop?
where to
That's all.
stop. But
Medical facilities.
A lot of the ones that he just brought up more appropriate for neighborhood commercial. It seems to me like the things in this table are things that you would specifically want more planning related to them. Like medical, that there's highway commercial, there's neighborhood commercial, and this is, we're only adjusting our planned commercial, right? So to me, we would want to be focusing in on things that where like the auditorium traffic might be a thing where we want more planning. Liquor store, we might want more like.
Yeah, and as
know if
you
that makes
said that, I just kind of read the purpose, and the purpose talks about that kind of use, not necessarily the neighborhood use and that kind of thing. Yeah, I think it'd be hard to go through and say all of these things that we think, that we'd be okay with.
We still in public hearing?
No,
Mhm.
Yeah, we are.
yeah, I'm sorry. Okay, anybody else want to speak to us in public hearing? Okay, take a motion to close public hearing.
I
Make
make
a
a
motion.
motion that we close the public hearing on business item F3 for the planned commercial zone.
I'll second that.
Motion second, take a vote.
Aye.
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 Thank you for reminding me. So yeah. What do we want to do there?
Well, my preference is to pick, I don't really like taverns, and I don't like vape shops, and I don't like tattoo shops. Liquor stores. Whichever one that is, that's my opinion. But I wouldn't mind putting something in there that covers the concerns that Gary had as far as,
Well,
maybe something more
can I make one comment?
common that kind of includes it all, or?
The sale of liquor is regulated by state law and it's governed by the state of Utah. So there's a preemption issue here. If they want to put in a state liquor store and it's in any, they can do it in any of our commercial zones, not just planned commercial. So I don't know whether or not we have to spend too much time on that. We could take it out, shoved right down our throat if the state wanted to put in a liquor
Of the
store.
state, yeah, they would.
Yeah, and with that thought, it almost, yeah, I'm in favor of taking it out as well. However, I do think that our code right now has nothing in there regulating any of this type of stuff. And so, whether we take it out and then they come in and say, oh, that, it's regulated by the state, you're going to put it in. Now we need to have some code that.
I actually went and looked in our definition section. I don't think we have a definition of a liquor store either.
Well, as far as I didn't see any code that pertained to any of that.
Yes.
Doesn't the state though?
They
They're
do.
the only one that
They regulate it all. I mean, certain types of alcoholic beverages over a certain content things, it can
Their
only be
location is
sold
and things like that.
at a state liquor store in
They
the state of
do,
Utah.
but it can be considered a minimum standard, right? Or
Yes.
And then we can add to
Add
that.
to
So
it.
maybe through code or ordinance, we could take it off, but in the future, we maybe want to be looking at ways to regulate those types of businesses, how we want them to
I
be.
guess my point is that we can regulate sit-down establishments that serve liquor, restaurants, if they have a liquor license and stuff like that. So we can regulate that through our zoning, but the actual store or the selling of liquor in bottles like that, that's regulated by the state. I just don't know that it's necessary to have it in there at all. So that one item, I think, let's not spend a lot of time on it because we take it out and it's not like someone's going to privately come in and apply for a liquor store because they can't have a liquor store
So
in the state of Utah.
we do have in our uses with Firelight, it talks about taverns.
They can have taverns. That's where it's sold at a sit-down establishment where it's served
Right.
to you.
Yeah, and I'm not sure what the other ones are, like bars, dance
Mhm.
halls,
Mhm.
things like that
Mhm.
that can serve alcohol,
Yep.
those kind of.
Yep.
And so when I saw that, I said, we've already allowed it through our
Oh, and you just think that we ought to possibly come up with some standards for it.
and that's not in this meeting.
Yes.
But it's just a thought that, hey, we've already said, it's
Fair enough.
already in Firelight, or they've already been approved in And I don't know if they're conditional or how they
is-
present it, but
It was
It's
conditional.
conditional.
Yeah.
I'm fine with taking them off in this meeting and then maybe later thinking about creating some ways to control, because we've already got something that's just a thought.
I think we leave them on, just, I mean, it's already permitted in planned development community. So, and again, if an adult wants to go have a drink, why do I care? You know, it's just, I just don't see it's any of my business. You know, there's a great tavern in Fredonia that serves amazing Mexican food. Doesn't mean I have to have a drink, but that's a tavern. And so why do I care? You know, I do care about vape shops just because I have a friend who owns a vape shop at Richfield, and it's a constant struggle keeping underage kids from going in there. That I can see is firsthand that I know that if that's a problem. But I mean, it's pretty hard for someone underage to go into a tavern and drink illegally. So if someone's consenting age, why do I care? That's just my opinion. You know, that doesn't mean I have to. I mean, it's already allowed in Firelight, so anyway.
Don't we have a
That's my
zoning or
thought.
something to control
Well, that's the,
We could
conditions-
control just where it goes.
conditions and things on it?
Yeah.
Conditional, we can put conditions, I guess,
the
Tattoo
other
parlor.
thing is we create ordinance that says this is what they have to, they have to be this far away and this, they can only have so many per, we don't end up with bars everywhere or whatever.
eventually they'll probably have a golf course out there and then they'll want to have a little bar in there.
Right.
That's the kind of thing that I was thinking about when I'm like, well, we can take it off, but it doesn't mean that it won't come in and say, hey, you know what?
Right.
This is a use similar to this and we want it. And, I agree with that. Maybe we want to take it a different route and say, how do we regulate it, not just erase it, especially thinking that I've already seen it on a use table that
Yeah.
it was allowed or
Yeah.
conditional or whatever it was. Gary.
Oh,
You got something to
listening.
say, man. That's it. I wish I was like you.
I really don't. If it's disadvantage of ours to take it off in case somebody fights that, then
I don't know.
I would just assume it was removed. But if state code is gonna turn around and allow it, I don't know where we're at.
So,
Taverns there, you can't have them by schools and churches and all that stuff by state code anyway. So I don't know. That's kind of my
Have them
feeling.
in residential area either, or just got to be in some kind of a commercial district.
Well, in Utah, you'd have a hard time getting far enough away from a church anyway.
Oh,
not within.
throw it down. Yeah.
All right, so-
Firelight's not that big. I mean, if there's regulations, how close it can be to certain establishments, it's probably not gonna be able to.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. I do. Yeah, I look through this code and I know I'm 200 feet away from something and I'm like, that's pretty close. So that I don't remember exactly what it was, but so
Let me see if I can clarify. Again, I don't think that we need to have liquor store in there because we don't, liquor stores as that we don't have it defined in our ordinance, but a liquor store under Utah law, it is only regulated by the state and they're the only ones who operate liquor stores. So I think that one should be taken out. If you want taverns, you want to keep it in there or take it out, I think that's your choice. I don't even know that we need to go. I appreciate a citation to Utah code that refers to distancing, but those types of a tavern or a restaurant that has a liquor license, they're regulated by the state anyways, and they won't give them a permit to do that if they're within so many feet of a school, a church. There's a couple different things. And so I don't know that we need to ourselves, because what we're, in my mind, what we're doing is we're acting like the alcoholic beverage regulation entity, which we're not.
Right.
So we just need to decide, do we want this type of use or not? And I'm telling you, let's not even talk about liquor stores, because we can't, if someone privately came in and asked to do it, we couldn't
Couldn't do it anyway.
anyways. And so you guys just need to decide, do you want tattoo parlors and you want taverns or not? And just go.
So if we're ready for a motion, we can do that. Everything else in the code or in the draft looked good to me, so.
Well,
So
we're gonna make a motion, which way you gonna pick? Makes sense to
Well,
take
I
the
think
liquor
he-
store right out of there, because it makes no sense. to
That's
even
kind
have
of,
it.
what that's kind of what
Right.
he's just.
If we want to
alluded
have,
so.
we already have taverns can be okayed out there in Firelight, from what I understand. You're not gonna have them in Old Town. People gotta pick where they're gonna live, I guess. I don't know about vape shops.
So are you
that's-
saying keeping them in or take them out?
Well, I would take the liquor store out for sure.
Okay. Yes, but are you saying vape stores and taverns?
I'm not really saying taverns because we've already approved the taverns. haven't
Okay.
we?
Well,
You know, is that a fact?
Yes,
the
but it's
possibilities.
only allowed because of a development agreement in a commercial zone,
Right.
in an MPDO, or commercial planning area in an MPDO zone. So it's not like it's,
that's
Either
probably the
that
only
or
place
we-
that ever
we
be
put-
built anyway.
We put stricter
rightfully in
compliance on the
Tocqueville,
taverns.
but I'm just saying, you guys need to say as a policy, do you want in a mixed use where you're, I mean, if you look at the purpose of this zone, when I read it, it says, where combination of typical uses include large scale master plan commercial centers with outlined commercial pads, big box stores and offices. Okay. You want taverns around that. Are you fine with having if there's like
Yeah, okay.
strip malls attached to these bigger boxes, can there be a tattoo parlor in there? You guys fine with that? Then just be, so yeah, we think that is liking, fine. Then let's just keep it as is, because that's those uses have been in our ordinance. We're talking about taking them out now while we're making some other changes. That's all that we're doing. You just got to decide, do you want
I
it?
think leave them in, but I do think we should take out vape shop.
And I'm advising you to take out liquor store.
And liquor store, yes. Yes, that's a given.
Well, you can take tavern out to it, and if they want to come back in, they'll probably get it anyway.
Take it out.
We can apply for it.
Take it out.
That way we're closed. And then we have them out there now, and then if it comes back.
Okay,
I'm
make a motion.
Looking for a motion.
Try to make this motion here. Liquor stores out. Vape shop.
No.
Leave a tattoo parlor in.
I don't know.
You're making the motion. You got to make.
Well, now we're talking tattoo parlor now here or something. I mean, we're not there yet, I guess.
Okay, so your motion just includes those items that you stated then. Tavern, liquor store, and vape shop,
Vape shop,
but not tattoo parlor.
maybe not. You want?
No,
You're the one doing
that's
it.
You're making the
your
motion. You make the motion.
I'm taking the input.
We'll give you a vote when you're
If you
done.
don't want the tattoo parlor, I'll put that in there too.
Okay, so is that your motion, including tattoo parlor?
Okay. I'll make that. What are we giving on here?
Okay, then you got a second on that?
So which version
Still
is it?
working.
Sorry.
Are you making my motion?
Playing quasi
Hey,
chair
was that
here.
motion decent enough?
Which version is it though that we're doing?
This is,
Or do we restate it one time?
Oh, what version? I'll
Are we
tell you.
doing the version with the codes in it, or are we doing the
Oh,
version?
we do need to clarify that. So the one without those things in it.
Without the references to state code.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that was for you guys to.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So version, which one is that without those?
all right, you guys got me so
Uses.
messed up. I can't even make this motion now.
Well, he's got a
so close.
copy.
We had you
I
there,
know.
Wayne. Come on.
It's almighty.
So if you're not wanting the one with the references to state code, it would just be the original version that was
Which-
presented at the previous meeting.
You want me to make a?
That one has the existing uses that were there prior, so you'd need to make direction.
Strike it. No, Wayne, the motion is the original version,
Yes.
striking taverns, liquor stores, tattoo parlors, and
Vape
vape
shops.
shops.
So,
That easy?
That's a motion.
So moved. Okay, so
Make that
it's
motion.
been moved then. Okay.
okay,
do we have a
I
second?
got a motion. I need a second.
Start down there.
Well, no, we're getting a second.
Oh, yeah.
We're getting tired, I think.
Second.
Okay, I got a motion and a second. We'll take a vote.
Aye.
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 Nay.
Wow.
I think we
I
should
thought you
leave
were-
taverns in there.
okay,
I
okay.
just don't think we should be imposing.
I think they'll come back.
That's okay. That's all right. That's all right.
Okay, that's our motion. So I'll take a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion. We adjourn.
Second.
Second, take a vote.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, 2 hours.
Aye.
Time is 9:04.
9, oh my God.
Thank you all.